What's up, everybody? Thanks for downloading the Thunk Tank podcast. Welcome to old and new listeners. So this topic for today's episode was basically like teaching philosophy and teaching stories. Joe and I have been teachers for a long time. For me, I've been a private music teacher for probably 10 or 11 years now. Joe's been a college professor for a while. He's also done some private tutoring kind of teaching. So we had different perspectives on the whole topic, but we also kind of converged on very similar ideas. I would say the main idea, it's a very sort of scientific literacy type of concept or philosophy of teaching, which is just, you have to teach people how to think, not just what to think, but how to think. And of course, knowing what to think is important, but you have to know how to use knowledge, how to arrive at solutions through thinking and critical thinking and logic, just how to balance your mind and learn how to think. And thinking takes effort. And I encounter so many people who just, it's not that they don't know how to think, they're too lazy. And so you have to like work your brain out like it's a muscle and encourage it to think. So this is what besides teaching the specifics of, a musical instrument, this is what I try to impart on the kids I teach. And I think, in fucking 2018, we got Trump as president. Just how embarrassing that in a country of 330 million people, those were our two choices for last election, and we're all complicit in this kind of situation that's keeping societies, we need more critical thinking, I guess is my point. And we need better thinking and clearer thinking, and education is the biggest factor that shapes how a kid is going to learn how to be a critically thinking and balanced adult. So I think that was at the core of our message, but we had a lot of detail in there, and also we each told a few funny teaching stories, so check those out. All right, so a few things to take care of. I'll try to be fast here. First off, we joined up with this campaign called 2 Pods a Day, which is basically a campaign that's aiming to introduce podcast listeners to 2 new independent podcasts every day for the whole month of July. So it's supposed to, like independent podcasts have trouble, getting visible on the internet. They get lost in the shitstorm of noise that is the internet, and the big, really popular podcasts often just dominate all the downloads. So this is sort of aiming to give some visibility to independent podcasts, and basically for the whole month of July, I believe, each day there'll be 2 episodes from a different independent podcast like ours. So we'll be on there one of the days. I don't know which one. And so check those out. We'll put that in the episode notes. Let's see. Check out our blog. That's right. We write a little short blog post for each episode, and it's sort of like a way to expand and sort of drive home whatever the topic was. So check that out at thunktankpodcast.wordpress.com. Last thing here, Patreon. We have some Patreon supporters to thank. Patreon is a way to support us on online, basically for as little as $1 an episode, which is about $3 to $4 a month, depending on the month. You can get, support us for one, but you'll also get access to some bonus material. For now, we have like 3 or 4 Drunk Tank episodes up there. That's when we just keep rambling after an episode and drink more beer. And so those are pretty funny. And you can get full access to those at patreon.com/ThunkTankPodcast. So here's one of our Patreon thank you toasts. We have a thank you toast to Kara and to Drew and to Brett. I don't want to use last names, so we're just going to keep it at first names. And then for Kara, you also have 2 other levels of fucking like reward tiers that you've overpassed by being such a Patreon supporter. That's not a sentence. So basically, I have a Turkish poem here as a way to say thank you for you, Kara. Here goes. Güller kırmızıdır, menekşeler mor, ayaklarım terliyor ve lelekler zıplıyor. Bağış yaptığınız için teşekkür ederiz. Kertenkelerin takla attığı bir dünyada hepinizi görmek isteriz. Okay, and I'll give you the translation just because obviously. That was, roses are red, violets are blue, my feet are sweating, and storks are jumping. Thanks for your donation. Hoping to see you all in a world where lizards are doing backflips. So, folks, you donate at $5 per episode, and you'll get a crazy Turkish poem like that. And also, Kara, you get, as a $9 an episode contributor, you get to author a Would You Rather. So you gotta let Johnny know a Would You Rather that you want us to do, and pending Genie's approval with the Genie Council for the Would You Rather, that'll be on the next episode. So yeah, genuine gratitude for everyone listening. We have a lot of fun making this, and we want to continue it, so consider supporting us, as Joe kind of says in his slurred, craft beer, drunky, buzzy voice. Like, share, and subscribe. All right, so enjoy this episode on teaching.
Attention humans, this is a thunk tank. Please insert this podcast directly into your nearest orifice for viewing pleasure.
Okay, you ready? Oh shit.
Welcome to the thunk tank. Welcome to the thunk tank.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Welcome. Come into our thunk tank.
Luke, don't switch to the other peanuts.
Welcome to the thunk tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
and we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
I think
We might have second doggo. We got new doggo at the studio.
double doggo.
We
Double
not only do we
doggo,
have double doggo, we have double go-go on the thunk tank.
Go ahead, try to finish that sentence, Luke.
All right, yeah. I think Luke's having a stroke.
Welcome to the thunk tank.
Oh my god.
It's been a while.
I was just mentioning.
rusty.
I just wanted to mention double doggo because there might be random barking in the background of this episode. We are crate training the new doggo, so she is not in pain, but she is a loud bitch.
Look at this guy training dogs while he's podcasting. That's impressive.
Oh yeah. If I do just one thing, I get bored. You know.
Yeah, he's drinking, he's podcasting, he's training dogs. He's a Johnny Genie of all trades.
Sure am.
So it's been a while since we thunk tanked in this way. Like,
I know we haven't had an in studio thunk tank in a while.
Yeah,
It's nice to all be together.
Welcome,
again.
Johnny, through Skype, and I'm back here.
You are rusty. I can feel it.
My thunk gears are rusty. It's been a while since I've been in the tank.
You got to lubricate them.
The tank is
Why
dry.
don't you just hang back, lube up, and let me let it just happen naturally.
Is this your job pitch when you go into an interview, Johnny?
Yeah, we're at the nipple flicking phase right now. We gotta tease it a a bit. Get the.
It's amazing what a nipple flick could do.
Oh God, this is the intro to our teaching stories episode.
Oh shit!
Are we doing that episode? Never mind.
Of course we are. We're well prepared for this, ladies and gentlemen.
How to teach tantric sex, right?
Well, that's an option. I suppose there's workshops out there. Like, share, and subscribe.
I think usually, like, one of the good things about popping on an intro afterwards to an episode is we usually choose topics that
true.
We don't even really know what direction they're going to go in.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, like, roughly, you set a few paths of
we're
where
experts
it could go
in our
your
field.
head or whatever, but I kind of like our topics because they're so open-ended. It's like, let's just see where it goes.
It's like jelly.
Like the nuclear weapons episode, like...
I don't remember recording that one.
Yeah, you blacked out. Like, so it's like...
Yeah,
go listen back to that one, guys.
That's why.
I mean, Joe stays remarkably... coherent even in blackout.
It doesn't
stage.
sound like I'm blacked out, but I'm down deep.
I mean, that's happened to me a few times. I was by myself in my room, so it was kind of trippy and like.
You mean the New York studio?
New York sub studio.
Our satellite
studio.
Yeah. See, Johnny gets it.
This rough episode, I guess, is going to be teaching
philosophy,
teaching stories.
Yeah.
And I think, Johnny, you texted the other day. You were like, what the fuck do I know about teaching?
Oh, you know a lot.
And Joe was like, yo, you've had a lot of bad teachers. So that's right there. That's gold.
Yeah, that's gold, baby.
Yeah, but just because you've had a lot of botched plastic surgery doesn't mean you know anything about medicine.
Well, yeah,
It just
you
means
could,
you're an idiot.
you could extend that to anything about anything. Just because you've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of garbage picked up outside your house doesn't mean you know anything about cooking toast. And it's like, wait,
Right.
what,
So
you
I've had
cook toast?
but specifically I've had bad teachers. Doesn't like how does that qualify me in anything?
Oh, because of the second reason I wanted to do a teaching episode with Joe, which was like teaching stories, like all the insanity that I've mopped up as
Yeah.
a teacher.
There's a lot
or
of it.
tried to mop up or failed at mopping
Yeah.
up. Like it's like a whole world, especially, I mean, we have slightly different teaching experiences. Joe, you teach like
Yeah. Well,
at
we
university mostly.
and we have like even within there, like I've taught in so many different environments.
Sure, high schools,
High schools,
one-on-one tutoring.
Yeah, tutoring
My
at
teaching
libraries, bus stations,
Back alleys. That one basement that only locked from the outside. That was weird. You
Yeah.
wonder why that guy brought you in.
Oh, you know that basement?
Wait, you were there for that seminar?
That was that private tutoring, right? The guy told you to come back, but he wanted you to come back after dark and preferably
No, he
like
told me
get
to
dropped
come
off.
on his back.
Okay. That was the tantric
He said,
workshop.
"Come back and come on my back." No,
Oh my god!
jeez.
I was going a little different with
All
it,
right,
but-
so
No, you weren't.
No, mine they were going to be like homeschool shut-ins. Luke just went on to full on like come over and rape me, Mr. Teacher. And it's like I didn't. Okay.
all right, this is a rough
do
start
it.
to the teaching episode, but I'm going to leave it in. Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. Do it live.
editing
You'll do
this
it
out.
live.
This brings us
we'll do it
to our
live.
first major issue in modern American education: lack of engagement. If you don't feel engaged by the horrible visuals that we're presenting, then you're not present. You're not even paying attention, and you have to meet the teacher. Am I doing a good job here, Joe? You have to meet the teacher halfway.
Well, could you
Does
imagine,
sound
Johnny?
like a thing?
Think of all the boring classes you've been in. If they had started with the insanity that you and Luke just went through, would you have paid more attention?
Yes.
Much more. I would have been much more hyped.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about.
There's
But,
something there for sure.
Before the specifics, like, so teaching philosophy is just a cool thing. It's something I've been thinking about for 10 years as I just teach. But also the hilariousness of teaching stories is what I'm really...
Yeah, that's good stuff.
What did you just whisper, Joe?
Pedagogy.
What is that?
I
I don't know what that is.
It's a method of teaching. Like you would say, oh, his trumpet pedagogy is so genius. Like he has such creative ways to get the best out of his students.
it's your teaching. It's not just your teaching style.
Philosophy
It's your
style.
teaching style, but it's also your philosophy of like,
Technique even.
yeah, how do you accomplish whatever it is that you perceive to be the goals of education?
Sure.
You know, specifically within your field.
Hey, Worf. Lovely dog
So
here.
pedagogy is a fancy way of saying all of
So,
the diarrhea that just came out of my mouth.
So why don't you just say like it's my lesson plan? Because everyone knows what that is. Why do you have to be a dick and encode?
Because you have to pay me more if I call it a
Well,
pedagogy.
I actually, I
And you
like
don't
the
pay me
word.
anything 'cause I'm a
It's
teacher.
a good word. I
It is a
I
good
know
word.
what you're
It's
saying, Johnny.
useful.
There are some words that people just use to be jerks.
But lesson plan is, on a practical level, a lesson plan is an actual lesson plan that you bring to a class and teach, whereas pedagogy is something different. Lesson plans are a part of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
All right, if you say so. I'm going to be the
pupil?
No, the idiot.
You're not the idiot.
You're just gonna.
You're the thoughtful
No, like
observer.
in the
Johnny?
Socratic dialogues and stuff. I know this much. I think of education and stuff. There was always like the interlocutor. Like there's different roles, and then there's the idiot whose job was to ask the obvious questions. Oh, so let me explain that.
What was
Then
the-
why that?
What was the mention of Socratic comment?
Dialogues?
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that a thing? There's always the idiot who, like, you're trying to explain something to an
is
intelligent
a
person who's
character in
getting
those,
it,
I think,
and
yeah.
then there's
Is it?
the idiot who's like asks the obvious questions to set him up. I'm the setup guy. I'm the idiot.
Also,
Yeah.
in like Nietzsche, they show like the hyper intellectual person as like a character itself,
Yeah.
and it's as a weakness too. Like,
Oh,
if
I
you
think
get
it
too
is.
sucked into intellect, then it's
But
a weakness.
Johnny, to your point, that's a great point because that comes up all
to
the
your
time.
point, that's a great point.
It is.
To both your
His
points,
points circle around.
I
I'm
love
telling
my
you.
point.
No, but like that comes up all the time in class where a student will ask something and I'll be like, "Oh my god, that's so obvious. Why didn't I fucking mention that?" Because clearly a bunch of people
Didn't realize this.
didn't realize this either. And I'll say like, "Oh my god, good thing you mentioned that because actually it's this." And you can tell a lot of other students they're like, I don't want to ask that question because I don't want to be the person to ask that question. But often,
Embarrassed.
Yeah, that's a big
let's
problem
say.
in general, right? I never wanted to ask the question in school. Well,
I mean, at a certain age,
I didn't either.
You get enough confidence. Like I felt like I was confident enough to know if my question was stupid or not.
Oh, I didn't. Not until like college.
That's what I meant in college.
Yeah, for sure. I did
Maybe
not like
even the
asking
second
questions.
year of college.
Well, high school's a fucking zoo anyways.
I just
Grade
needed
school's
like a
zoo.
year to like see that other people asked.
Oh, forget it. By like my like junior, senior year of college, I was like so on it.
Well,
But
it's
it took
also
years
the
to get there.
It's also like that tribal instinct. Like in high school, like these people, the kids, you don't want to look stupid in front of them either, right? Because that's your like peer
It's a
group.
much more
Where in
smaller
college,
tribe. Yeah.
College are just random. Even if you're at a big school, like you have those same kids in that class all year. You don't want to be the loser in that class.
Well, and also my mind doesn't work necessarily at the level where I can ask questions in the moment. Like I'm so much better because I remember that in grade school, and it's something I'm mindful about teaching now, even at the college level. Like I was always so much better at coming up with questions after a lecture or after a discussion when
Maybe
I had
even hours later,
where I'd be like, oh, this is a really good question, and I would want to ask the person after the fact, but like in the moment I'm like still processing or synthesizing everything. And
well, that's happens with everything. Like someone's being a dick, and like you had a perfect comeback, but you think of it 20 minutes later.
like
you're
George
oh, I should've said
Costanza.
that.
well,
Yeah.
Hey Johnny, feel free to
jerk
point your
Stockholm.
camera away from your crotch that you're scratching and up to your
sorry.
face.
There was a dog there before, just like hanging
I
out.
thought that was part of his like allure of being the idiot asking
Oh, I
questions.
see. Like we were talking to his crotch.
Oh, so as I
my
scratch my
crotch.
balls, what is a lesson plan?
Hey
Right.
man, it was 100 degrees outside today. I can scratch my balls if I want. All right?
I can scratch my balls if I want to, and I can leave my balls behind.
Don't do that.
Okay, so
No, I like that.
So Joe, I'm gonna start
you
by
could, if
asking
you
you just a definition of teaching.
Yeah.
In a second, but it's customary on Thunk Tank podcast. We're thinking and drinking and
Yeah, we gotta go through the
in
basics,
virtual
baby.
tanks of mind tanks of beer and
Mind
other
flow.
substances.
More beer.
Ethers,
Oh
fluids.
yeah, caffeine.
So we're at a late night
Johnny.
Thunk Tank. So bear with us. It's probably why
God.
we're wandering.
I'm
a lot.
exhausted.
It's coming up on midnight. We just started.
I actually worked all day.
But
This
it's
is really
customary to talk about what beer we're drinking.
Yeah. So what do we got?
Well, we just had one.
Yeah. So we just had the Barrier Hop Dam IPA. I think it's really good.
It was lovely.
Yeah, it's a double rye IPA, 7.5%. I think it's one of their better beers I've had in a
Double
while.
rye?
Double rye IPA.
So it's a double rye IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Double rye.
what,
double
what
rye.
is that?
IPA, yeah.
Yeah. it's-
What does the rye taste like? How does it come across in the beer?
It's smelling really grassy. Like, it was really refreshing. I've had like too many of the juice bomb type IPAs in my fridge
Yeah.
lately, and this is a really refreshing change. You're
Yeah.
getting like a different personality side of the IPA profile, I think.
yeah.
But what from the rye? Can you taste that, like that spicy rye flavor? Does that come through?
Honestly, I don't know enough.
it's
about
not
that
so much
flavor to
spicy.
pick it out.
I think it's just
I mean, you've had rye bread. You know what rye tastes
it's
like.
much like
Yeah.
it's much brighter than or it's a different kind of
It had that
brightness.
dryness to rye bread. Maybe,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, in like how
I love a good
it
rye.
didn't linger on your tongue. It was just like very.
Yesterday I had a
said what it had to
Hefeweizen.
say and then moved on.
I had a Hefeweizen that's normally made with wheat, and it was made with like a rye wheat hybrid called Triticale, and it was so different. It was like a rye, it was like a rye wheat beer. It was instead of
Hefeweizen.
a wheat-
Nice.
a Hefetrit they called it.
It's just fun to say.
And we were going to do this
Hefeweizen.
episode last week, and so I ended up, of course, drinking the beers that I was going to use.
Oh, you had some
But
good
I had
candidates
some
too.
good shit. I'll
Yeah.
just mention. real
Luke,
quick.
they don't go bad in the cans like French fries would.
I'm
You
not
gotta keep 'em
saying
for-
I drank them because I was scared they would go bad. It's hard for me to like watch Netflix upstairs
And not
knowing
drink
I
awesome
have, like,
beer.
a Vale Brewing beer in my fridge. So
you know it's there. Yeah,
I
it's right
had
there.
Dirt Nap from them and also a beer called Alone. They were both IPAs, very, very good. And two things I noticed about Vale, they fill their cans up so fucking high, there's just literally no way to open them
Really?
without spilling beer.
That's interesting.
You know, like the
I've
type
never
of
run
beer,
into
like
that issue.
It's just
Oh, that's huge.
Really?
is that for freshness, you think?
Well, it's partly that. It's also because a lot of places don't buy canning machines anymore. A lot of companies travel with a canning unit, and they'll just charge you per can. It's a mobile unit like that they just unload off a truck. So you might only do a canning release once a month. So that's how often you need it. So that they'll so it's not their equipment. You know what I mean? Like they don't. It's not something that if you do a batch, you might fuck up and overfill or underfill it or whatever. But okay, I figured out what I did the next time. No, like
Sure.
it's a weird variable, but also for freshness. If you're not confident in your canning technique to make sure no oxygen's getting in there, then yeah, you gotta.
Okay.
I
did notice their beers age
minimize
very
that
well
headspace.
compared to some other beers that I have a lot. Basically, this one beer called Dirt Nap, over the course of a week, it started to change. I was like, oh, it's different each day. I had like 8 of them total. Not like one night. I mean, like over 2 weeks. And by the second week, for a beer like Sand City, it's normally you're starting to feel the age of it already.
Yeah.
Same with some Treehouse beers, too. And this one got better. It continued to just
Wait, was this from Vale?
Yeah, it was called Dirt Nap.
I think that was where I had that really crazy sour.
Oh, yeah.
And like the first few days after it was
They
canned.
put warnings on their sours. They're like, yo, keep this refrigerated, otherwise it's perishable.
Oh,
There's just fruit in here.
But that was the weird thing because we were worried that it would go bad really quick. So we killed the first one and we were like, this is insane. It's too sour. And then we had it like 4 or 5 days later and it was 10 times better.
Yeah.
Sours,
so weird.
you can age because first of all, the bacteria that sours it, if it's like a live sour type thing, like an unpasteurized one of these crafty sour beers that everyone's into, like those microbes will just keep going, and they live off of like oxygen, so they'll scrub out any oxygen if you do underfill your body. You know what I mean? If it wasn't like a really well done, so they'll just keep doing work. But much like infinitely slower.
Yeah.
But they also what was I going to say? Oh, the sourness, like they get the pH of that shit drops so much, you know. It
No, tell us about the pH.
I'm going to save the pH for our beer episode coming up, guys. It's going to be a science and nonsense heavy episode.
Don't we have 2 beer episodes? We got like a science of brewing type thing and a guide to brewing, just whatever, and also the beer history thing.
Yes, and I plan to have experts on each as guests.
Word.
Are you going to research?
So, yeah, so we should hype that up a little bit in these episodes leading up to it. We'll have a brewer on. I'm going to have a home brewer, too, so you get different approaches, like professional and, personal or hobbyist type approach. And then I also have some people in the industry that work in distribution and sales, and they know what, like, rather than what goes into making it, what people want and trends and all that fun shit, because there's a lot of layers to it. Like anything else,
Wow.
you can go as deep as you want into it. So
You got
Yeah.
the hookup.
we got a whole beer series episode coming out, and we won't do them all at once, but we'll do
we can do them in
interspersed with our
installments, yeah.
Yeah.
interspersed with our regular material, so you don't get a palate fatigue of beer.
Also, one of the things that like
Thank you, Joe.
I think sort of developed when we first started like podcasting. The reason craft beer came along for the ride was sort of like,
Well,
you
we
know,
were,
for
we
a
were drinking
while-
it anyways.
for a while, potheads had a reputation, like a stereotype of like, oh, I'm eating like Cheetos and watching cartoons, oh. And then like a lot of podcasters, like Rogan's podcast, like made
Wait,
it
did you call
thing.
him a podcaster?
Podcasters? What?
Oh, I thought you like that.
Podcasta?
I,
Do you think I said it like that?
no, I thought that was like a type of podcast, like Joe
podcaster.
Rogan. Like, oh yeah, you know.
Oh, I'm saying that wave of podcasters.
Yeah, the foundational
They sort of
podcaster.
showed like, you know what? Fuck like NPR type radio.
Yeah.
We're gonna get stoned out of our mind and just air it on the internet.
Yeah.
Now, I'm
And
not
it- and it
saying we're
works.
doing that. I'm saying we're doing that with beer.
Yeah, people have done it. It's just.
That's not where I thought you were going with
I
it.
think we're the only ones to listen to it so far.
Yeah.
People are listening to us on YouTube, though. It turns out. I talked to somebody the other night.
Who was that?
Yeah, that's where I listen to podcasts, is YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, somebody.
Because I only
like, yeah,
listen to
you guys on
podcasts
YouTube.
where I always have Wi-Fi there, so I'd rather not download something. I'll
Fair
just
point,
stream it on
fair point.
YouTube.
So I'm glad it uploads
So,
to YouTube.
Joe just mentioned we just cracked this new beer. It's called
Oh.
Mirror Universe.
It's another. Well, this one's a hazy IPA. I think it's
You and your hazes.
7.0%.
So, but just even in comparison to that rye IPA we just had, this tastes better because we had that rye IPA. Like my
I like the rye better.
I love the rye better too, but I'm just saying like I love the contrast more than anything else. Like if
There's
I
a lot
go
to it.
hear a bunch of Bach concerts one weekend, I don't want to like go the next weekend to hear more Bach. I want to hear something totally different.
I like how you go to the most pretentious.
So that's why you went from IPA
because
to
I want to.
IPA.
I want to relate to you common.
You know what I mean. And now flourish your pinkies.
Because I know what you're doing. You're
when
driving
you drink
to
your
work
craft
right
beer.
now. We're coming through your car speakers right now because you're a loser who drives to work.
And probably is going to go home and drink Heineken and listen to the rest of this.
Wait, Luke, how do you get to work in a sedan chair?
I don't even have a car right now.
Oh, that's a whole
My
other thing.
1992 car died 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to figure out what the fuck to do, basically.
That's rough,
Yeah,
man.
damn. Well, it had a full life.
Anyways, what are you drinking, Johnny?
I'm actually drinking a homebrew.
Oh,
I started with. It came
Johnny
out pretty
Homebrew.
well. Yeah, I made this one on May 5th. There was a National Homebrew Day.
That's my day.
It is.
Cinco de Joe.
Okay, so
This
now
is my
they know your
Cinco-
name and birthday. They're only like a few digits short of identity.
Luke, what am I
Total-
hiding at
total-
this point? Go ahead,
no.
steal it. Have fun.
But so we made this in the parking lot of a real brewery because it was Big Brew Day, which is like National Homebrew Day. It's the first Saturday in
Oh
May.
yeah, I saw pictures
And
of that.
they do a big brew
Nice.
across. They call it that because there's simultaneous brews that go on across the country, and you all do a toast at the same time to the guy that organized it, who's like still around. Charlie Papazian. He's a pretty big figure in homebrewing.
Oh, great
but,
guy,
like he's
yeah.
still just like a dude you can meet at a festival and be like, hey, and
That's
like,
cool.
hey, what's up? What you drinking? Like he's like a normal
How'd it come
like
out?
dude. It came out really well. It's an unintentionally hazy because I don't use fining agents really. My beers don't last that long. That I need to worry
what do you mean
about
by
shelf life.
unintentionally hazy? Like what?
Well, like I didn't throw flour in it or like
I mean, most hazy
overly
beer
hop
doesn't
it
have
to get-
flour in it.
Well, a lot of the haze is like proteins, spoilage proteins that add to the body, but the beer doesn't last as long. That's why those hazy IPAs, you got to drink them fresh.
Are they
Otherwise,
are
those-
they unfiltered too? Is that part
Yeah,
of it?
well, pretty much all craft beer is unfiltered.
Because I know that's something that like a lot like that's what Sculpin does now. They have the unfiltered, and it's like really popular.
Oh,
But so instead of filtering, they'll use like gelatin or fish bladders or seaweed or something as
Ugh.
a fining agent to get all the like proteins to just cling to it, and they'll drop out to clear the beer up. But you don't need a filter to do that. Those are different things.
Oh,
I
but
see.
let me just
Okay.
just correct. So
But it's-
you're saying that they use a certain compound, like whatever protein, as a filter of sorts because they don't want to use a standard way of filtering.
Yeah,
And
so it's
that
called
ends
fining.
up
Filtering and
creating the haze.
fining are no, totally wrong.
Well, at least we knocked that out of the list of
Because
possibilities.
I'm saying, as far as I understood it, the haze was a result of a brewing method and not
Yeah.
like something. I mean, I'm sure there are fakeries.
No, so it's
now
called
that, like-
chill haze, and it's
Fakeries?
proteins. It's proteins from your malt or your wheat or whatever your malt that when it gets cold, it comes out of solution. It's not in the water anymore. It pops out of the solution. Like when you try to stir sugar or salt into water,
Yeah.
it gets cloudy first before it dissolves. So it comes out of solution, and then if it warms up again, it'll go back in, it'll clear up, and then you chill it, and it'll chill again. Every time that happens, they precipitate out. Sometimes they stay out of solution permanently, or they're spoiled. Those are the proteins that will go bad, and they're not going to hurt you, but they ruin the flavor of your beer. And that's
Very
why you
quickly,
can get you know what I'm talking about.
He's
if you've ever
teaching
gotten
us, Luke.
a craft beer that's shitty. Oh shit, I am.
That was
I'm
my
almost
mind
done.
blowing.
Yeah, I'm almost done. But so my homebrews, I don't really bother with fining agents because they don't ship from my house. They get drank within a month usually.
So then, what
'Cause
turned
I
this
do
one
small
hazy?
batches. That I didn't use anything to. Oh, so they have fining those proteins that will come out when it gets cold.
Yeah.
You add something that will grab those proteins and keep them from going back into solution, and then they'll just drop to the bottom of the tank, and then you get clear beer on top.
I see.
So you can use stuff that just seaweed they called Irish moss. Guinness uses fish or used to use fish bladders. That's why certain beers aren't vegan technically because they use fish products.
Yeah.
Well, don't they all use
You can
yeast,
use
which
you can
is-
use. Yeah, but that's a fungus. So vegans are okay with killing funguses. Those hypocrites.
yeah, they don't
but-
think fungi have
bastards.
souls.
Yeah, you can use. They make these little plastic balls you can use. I forget
That
what
got
they're called.
intense, Luke.
There's these little plastic balls that will grab
Picturing
them.
a big fungi.
Yeah, I usually
Like
use
Johnny.
seaweed. I am a big fun guy. But so anyway, so it's not a hazy IPA, but it is hazy. But it's not that style of a hazy IPA. It's just an IPA.
See, you can fucking
I got
teach,
you.
dude.
Um,
You got this. You just taught me a ton of shit about proteins. Look at that.
So here we are.
But totally out of context. You're not going to remember.
You're out of context.
We might forget to mention when we crack another beer, but listen closely into the background of the recording because you will hear that
and then we will link it
can.
in the description.
And we do always link to our beers that we're drinking.
Well, not always.
And
but
I'm drinking
mostly.
my next beer. I'll just tell you because it's on tap. You're not going to hear the kucha.
Sure.
I got a keg of that Body Electric from Wise Man Brewing.
Oh, dude, that's
yeah.
my favorite IPA there.
Great. Dude, that was
I
my
went to the
favorite beer
brewery.
we had down there.
Yeah, I drove down to the brewery, Wise Man Brewing Company in North Carolina, and I got a keg of their Body Electric double IPA.
Did you just say you drove down to North Carolina?
No, I drove down to the brewery in North Carolina.
Yeah, Johnny, when I was visiting you and we visited that brewery, that was by far my favorite beer there.
Yeah.
Body Electric.
I agree.
And it
And that's a hazy IPA.
It's a good IPA.
It's not anywhere close to like the haze craze level of haze, and I kind of liked it for that reason. It was just popping with the same.
Well, it's not like you're pointing out. It's not trying to mingle with the haze crowd. It's doing its haze thing.
Yeah.
It's Body Electricing and it's getting it done.
Yeah.
In
great
a
name,
very
too.
good way.
Great name.
Fantastic. Great can too.
They got some good names.
It's got aesthetic.
Let's
It's
get
got
to the
taste.
topic.
I like how you're like, all right.
All right, children, the class has begun. Sit the fuck down in your seats.
I would love to have Johnny as a guest lecturer in one of my classes.
I'll do it.
Honestly,
I know you
we were
will.
talking in last episode, we were talking about higher education,
Yeah.
right? And it's how many people would learn more by just going out into the world?
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of you could spend, let's say, an hour, whatever, lecture talking about grammar rules.
Yeah.
But it'd probably be more valuable if you just told Johnny to come in and say the shit he's learned from life thus far. Ramble. Get really stoned and ramble about what you've
Or at least open with that, right? It would
Right.
be it would be more memorable.
Right.
I mean, that's definitely speaking to pedagogy, as we defined earlier. That's definitely part of it is the fact that however I can manage it, the one thing I don't want to do when I teach is be boring, because I think that this is something that escapes. I mean, I don't want to speak for other teachers or professors or whatever, but I just remember it in other classes throughout my, whether it's not so much college experience, but certainly grade school experience, just boring material, but even worse, boring teachers who just didn't care about the material, didn't care about you, didn't care about themselves even. And it just, it spirals from there,
It was
right?
like a puppet that had no energy, and then you're just why are you if you're not even going to make your hand go ba 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 ba, I'm I'm a puppet, and you're just well, I'm supposed to do this. It looked I hate sometimes when you see someone working a shitty job right in front of you, and it makes you feel bad. You see you're getting food somewhere, and you just see the janitor just doing some bullshit, and they just have that sluggish walk about them and low energy. It's when you see a teacher with that kind of energy, it's so depressing.
Well, something that you mentioned too that kind of stands out to me, this idea thinking about, not just teaching that's engaging, but teaching that means something. That actually really means a lot to me. And one of the things that I do in my class, or I try to do, I think I would try to do it in any class, but oftentimes I'll start classes with kind of just writing exercises, and a lot of times I try to make them what I call real world exercises. So I'll come in with say this email. This is what I did the other day in class. I came in with this email and I said, I do my announcements, my housekeeping type stuff, and then I say, all right, so today I just want to start with something a little different. That's how I always start. I say, I'm going to start with something a little different. And
It's when you start Thunk Tanks and you're guys, this is the best episode.
Best episode ever.
Best episode you've ever listened to.
Best episode yet.
Yeah.
That way,
yeah. So
it's true each time.
It's true every time. Yeah. And
this one's the best.
Same thing with my lesson plans. Fuck you. And that's what I tell them. And so, the other day, I brought in. I said, guys, I got this fantastic email the other day. But I just want to run it by you guys because I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this is a good investment? And they're all kind of what? Because they were just expecting me to start babbling about
dude,
grammar.
We're at summer school.
Yeah. But then they're all right, let's check it out. And it's the most poorly written scam email about how like, you know, this
Dick enlargement.
This client of mine died, and he has many good millions of dollars, and I would like to share the good millions of dollars with you because you both have the same surname, and like if you give me your credit card information, I can like, you know, route the money to you, but like you have to do it now or don't bother responding to me. And it's just like there's all these flaws in like logic that you can go through, and they kind of laugh while they read it, but I tell them
it's so obvious, right?
So I do this though after I've talked to them about like rhetorical strategies, and when I say rhetorical strategies, I mean like strategies of persuasion. So I talk about like the author's credibility, the author's logical reasoning, and the author's emotional appeal. And I say, well, if you notice anything that's an issue with those points, you know, just mark where you notice that. And then they go through and they say, oh yeah, this makes the author not seem credible. This, you know, doesn't seem like very clear logical reasoning. You know, him demanding that he does this seems like an emotional appeal that is a little exaggerated.
Yeah.
And the point being in that example is obviously this is an exaggerated example, but in a better, more well-written scam email, you might notice one of these issues. Or like in another type of writing.
Or it's really, you might say, poignant now in 2018 with just the amount of news that's out there and sorting through what is real reporting, what is just hit piece reporting, because they often have giveaway signs.
Yeah.
Emotional appeal things that you're like, wait.
Well,
what does that have to do with the issue?
And so that's exactly it. Like, that's what I tie it into. And the whole point is that, you know, to your point earlier of like, oh, aren't you better just going out in the real world and, you know, figuring shit out and, you know, learning through experience? It's like, yes, there's a lot to be said for that. But my point with something like that, and there's a lot of other activities that I do like that. Like, I'll do like here's a parking appeal. I do another one called Professor Jekyll and Professor Hyde, and they're two parking appeal requests.
Oh, yeah.
And one is like really well written, and you can say like, oh yeah, I established my credibility. I try to connect with like, you know, the parking appeal person by saying like, you know, look,
I respect your job. I know this
exactly.
is what you do.
And the other's just like, yo, like I ain't paying this ticket anyways, man. Like, don't bother charging me because of these reasons. Like, you can't touch my car. That's illegal. And they notice and my point is that like any one of those flaws, if you slip up with those in other arguments in your real life, people are they're gonna call you out on it.
Sure.
So like it does apply to real world applications in that sense. So
how to manipulate people. I hear
the other
you.
thing, no,
there's a lot. Isn't that true though?
No, I mean,
yeah, Joe. The thing that jumped out about that would be like when you see one of those scam emails, you just know. You don't have to go through that exercise. You could just see and be like, this was written by someone who doesn't speak English, let alone is legitimate. You know, you realize instantly. You might not even go through all that. So I like that it makes people do that. Because if you do just go out in the world and learn shit, it's like, well, you might learn what to do at the right time, but you don't know why. And that's a big argument for education.
Yeah,
right?
there's
not how to do something, but also
there's a deeper
why.
There's a deeper There's a deeper lesson of internalization of these sort, like you say, like, well, why do you know that there's a problem there? And it's like if you can break it down categorically by like assessing like the credibility or the logical reasoning or the emotional appeal. It's the same thing that I do when I teach research. It's like, you can't just say an opinion and say, well, because I believe this or I feel this.
That reminds me of
you got to give more.
Even we have very different musical training backgrounds and ears and whatnot, but you could hear the New York Philharmonic and hear the difference between that and, let's say, a decent college orchestra, right?
Yeah, right.
You'd be able to tell, like, oh shit, that's badass. But you might not be able to say exactly how or why it's badass.
Totally,
whereas a musician could be like, did you hear the brass? Like they were just like perfectly in tune. Their fifths are just like locked in.
Or I could I could even get to the point where I could point out like, oh, that brass is killing.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be able to know the technical elements behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
And my brain would be flooded with those because that's where I've spent my time. And even just what you're saying about like rhetoric now, you know, when I said the thing about the parking attendant, like, I was like, oh, you need to recognize his job is legitimate. Like, like, I just came up with that because I hit the simulation in my own brain. I was like, oh, like, how would I do that? I was like, well, I have to put myself in this guy's shoes. He's working a job where all day he gives tickets. Yeah. And very regularly people complain. So I'm just one of those complainers. How am I different from any of them? Am I the same case, like, where I'm just complaining? Do I have a legitimate thing to say? Like, it's really just the ability to separate your one consciousness into many branches, and like see how the information
and
you're
that's
saying
and that's the interesting
received.
part, and that's why I do the Professor Jekyll and the Professor Hyde, because the Professor Hyde is what you really feel and you really want to say, but the Professor Jekyll is how you get what you really want.
And Jekyll's has that coyness to it. That's like, ooh, I'm gonna make sure I don't reveal too strongly exactly how I feel,
Right.
and instead craft it into a very nuanced.
Like how much of a valuable tool is that to be able to like recognize? So it's like,
and when you make it conscious, you realize I can actually hone this skill.
Yeah. I teach writing, by the way. I don't know if I said that on this episode yet. They might just be like, who is this like math professor who just goes off the rails with like crazy like persuasive strategies?
So I guess
I teach writing.
I mean,
he teaches he teaches a ladies like one of those pickup artist type classes.
Oh, God.
But specifically
Are they paying for that? Can I?
Specifically for men that are gold digging men. So it's men trying to find wealthy older like cougar types, I believe is the
usually
term.
Just when they're about to retire from parking ticket.
Right.
Careers.
Yeah,
It's a growing market
to show.
The
Yeah,
baby boomers are getting old.
and so he teaches this in. It's actually an old Kmart basement.
That's
they
where
have
it would be.
they have extra folding chairs if you guys want to come to a class. It's going to be great.
So I want to get
Did
back
I make
to
that? Was that too real? No, he really does teach writing. Sorry, that was my creative writing exercise.
yeah.
How did I do teach?
You're passing.
Yeah.
I feel like Johnny would pass your creative writing class. Just
Johnny
fine.
would pass my creative writing class with flying high colors.
So I
who
mostly
knows if I
have
showed
teaching
up, though.
experience from teaching private music lessons, and it is a very different, probably experience than you've had, Joe. But,
Oh yeah, teaching private is.
I just wanted to. I had a quote for that I was trying to get in earlier. You were talking about just like how uninterested you were as a student throughout your life.
Yeah.
And by the way, half the
Most of it.
perspective you have on being a teacher is the fact that by definition you were probably a student for a lot of your life
Yeah.
before you became a teacher.
and not a great one.
And for me, because I was teaching private music lessons for the past 12 years even
Yeah.
at this point, for most of those, I was a student and a teacher at the same time. So I got to sort of
Yeah.
play around with definitions and just kind of figure out what is it that a teacher really does.
Yeah.
And I realized
if
there's
I'm a
so many
student,
different types.
yeah,
and-
especially if I'm a student,
especially
right?
that. Yeah, I had both perspectives too.
Yeah.
So, anyways, this physicist I follow named Lawrence Krauss, he was
Great
I was
guy.
Watching, well, he's in a little bit of trouble right now with the Me Too
Isn't he a
thing.
racist or a sexist or something? What is he in trouble with the internet for?
I take that back. I take that back. World stage.
He had a Me Too. He got caught up in the Me Too wave.
Did he
Is
really?
he a diddler? What did he do? He diddled
Honestly,
someone?
I read his account of it, and it seems like
Go ahead,
he
Luke.
could be on the raw end of a bad kind of.
All right, so Luke is a rape apologist. Let's get back to your story.
But
What
at
was
the same
this?
time, like I
what was
could
your
see
hero
it being
doing?
true, so I'm remaining very null hypothesis.
How
on
about this? A guy said
His
this.
quote is good
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
you're really selling it, Luke.
yeah.
No, I mean it's. Here's the quote: "The biggest mistake a teacher can make is to assume that the students are interested in what they're saying." And I think so many teachers, they don't have empathy. And I'm not saying they don't have the skill of empathy, but just that they're not practicing it
Well,
in their
Luke,
job
to
enough
throw it
realize
back at you.
people aren't interested in what they're saying.
Yeah. I don't even think they care.
Sorry.
Most teachers.
To throw it back to you though is if they do care and they're all jazzed up and they realize half the class isn't even looking at them or listening, like they're on their phone, like that's got to be really dejecting. And then they end up
Yeah.
like that person
That's
you were
my
saying.
life, dude. And
But
I have to.
but then they end up like that person you were saying that ends up just going. You see them doing their job, like the janitor or something that just is like, I don't give a fuck, like just throwing shit around.
But that's
it's like
just-
then you get those teachers who don't care about their jobs because they know well you don't care, so why should I care? Fuck you.
Well, so
You're only
one,
here
that's
because you
just
have
like
to be.
tragedy
So am
of
I.
the commons, right? It's sort of like, why should I care? Everybody's fucked, kind of like logic. But it's also like, I mean, that's what I deal with all the time. It's like
but it's so hard too. Teaching
I'm
is
not saying it's easy, by the way. I'm just saying
teaching
that,
is like a hard
how's that
job
different
to
from
do.
anything else in life? You're going to bring a spirit of genuine energy that you want to promote good in the world, like when you when you get down to the nitty gritty, like a lot of what you do, if you're a good person, is just small things that you want to create good. And the funny part is, as you try to do those, you sometimes create bad, right? You sometimes, it gets fucked up, and then people say like, oh, that's just because you're an asshole, you did a bad thing or something because you have bad motives. And if you have enough times where you had a good motive, let's just use the teaching example again. I bring a completely genuine energy. I just want to help somebody and like fix their playing problem, whatever the situation is. And they just shut me down. And I have about right now 3-4 students that I feel like I have to put a hazmat suit on emotionally before I teach them.
Yeah.
Because what they do is they trick me, and I don't know if this is conscious or not. It's probably not. It's just kids being kids, like.
But they're so good at it.
But they trick me
They're so good at
into
it.
engaging again and really caring and trying to solve it. And then just when we might actually solve something, they just sort of power down and remind me that they're not actually trying.
Yeah,
And
well,
they were
playing
it tongue in cheek.
They were playing a game at that moment.
They were playing a game. They were bored.
Yeah,
and they played a game.
They were
with
bored
my
and
good
had to be there.
intentions.
Right.
So how many good intentions, Johnny? The question you were asking was basically like, how many times can a teacher bring genuine energy and good intentions to a situation, have it destroyed by kids? And if you're a high school teacher or above, even middle school, kids are smart enough to destroy you. And so it's like, what character are you going to be?
Not only are they smart enough to destroy you, they're brutal enough to destroy you.
Yes.
And they'll take pleasure in it. They'll love it. They'll relish in it.
Well, in a way, but they're also just not even thinking about it that deeply.
But is
it's just boredom too.
Isn't that little
scarier though?
But isn't that little psychopath?
I'm scared of that.
In a large group, isn't that little psychopath helping to teach the rest of the kids, being like, oh, like I didn't like it that now that person feels bad. Like I remember the times that the class pushed the teacher to cry, and the few asshole kids would be like, yeah, we did it, like, or get the substitute
and then I would
to freak
feel
out
weird about it. Yeah,
I would feel weird and bad because I was me developing empathy and being like, ooh, this is new, and I don't think I like it. And it happens enough times, you're like, yeah, I definitely don't like it. So then some real shit goes down, you're like, oh, this is wrong. Or
there
this
was a
is
middle
right.
school band teacher that like some unspoken like little kid ape like hive mind.
The group turned
somehow
on her.
decided that the group was just going to turn on her.
I remember that. I was in that band.
And so people started doing awful things and just like emotionally just like making her just regret ever wanting to be a human. It was like intense. And then even like the smart people that would normally be the goody two shoes kind of like
they got in on it too, yeah.
And you know how they got in it? They would raise their hand and be like, don't you mean an F natural? You know, like just correct in some kind of like
because
way.
she actually sucked, so she couldn't control the group. Because if you're a good teacher, you could get, you know, the good kids that want to learn to turn on the bad kids.
Sure.
You know, be like, you're ruining this for us too.
But she lost everyone.
And like, she lost everyone because she wasn't competent
and then somebody
and
locked
she wasn't
her in
fun.
a closet.
They did lock her in a closet
They jammed
for
the
a while.
trombone under the doorknob.
Oh my god!
And the whole
in the middle of
band's
class,
just warming up,
and
so
we
you
just
can't hear anything. She's banging on the door saying, "Let me out," and we're all just warming up. We're like, "Where's the teacher? She didn't show up."
And there was that moment where we did stop. There's that
really
moment
dark.
Yeah, there's a moment where, because I remember that there's a moment where we stopped warming up, and you could hear her banging on the door. And like nobody gets up right away.
Fuck you guys.
There's that like, who wants to be the one that gets up and turns against the mob mentality? And somebody did.
It might have
went
been
up and
me.
let her out.
The memory's like kind of.
I think you were on the end there because you were first or last chair.
I think I was like second trumpet or something. So I don't know. But the whole situation was cruel. And what I'm trying to say is like, you know, there is a breaking point for everyone.
Yeah.
And as a teacher myself, the point of that quote, I would say, is that like never assume people are interested, and also assume that if someone's bored, it's your fault.
Well, there's two different things there, and it's the idea that teaching is more than about just expertise. Like it's not enough just to be an expert in something, and you see this problem especially in higher ed. Professors who might be geniuses or might be the most knowledgeable people in their field, but their interpersonal skills leave a lot to be desired, right?
Yeah. They don't connect with people. They don't.
Yeah. And that's as, if not more important in a lot of contexts. I mean, even at the college level, like I remember having instructors who you would just be like, what is this guy doing?
Like, what is your life mission? Like, are you interested in this topic?
Exactly.
Are you trying to get me interested?
Or
Do you
like,
care?
yeah, are you even interested in the fact that you have to be in this room? And if the answer is clearly not, by your body language and just your speech patterns, like that's gonna rub off on me as a student. So there's something about, you know, I don't like the idea of calling it like the performance aspect of it, but it's an interpersonal, like, you know, sort of not production, but, you know, taking in a room, right, and kind of feeling out the vibe and feeling out, all right, how do I manage all of this chaos in here? That's hard as fuck to do.
So yeah, especially on the group dynamic, like,
well, especially
level.
like going back to grade school. That's why I don't teach grade school. Like, I don't think I could.
I'm not sure I could.
It's
I'm not
really
sure
hard.
What I know, and I think the same thing about myself when I think of like, what would it be like to have a kid? I think to myself, I would be really, really good at it until it broke me and I stopped doing it. Like,
but would
you know, like,
break?
if I taught second, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Luke, would you just snap me, you little fuck, and kick one of them one day and be like, "Oh, I'm going to prison"?
Hey, how many kids does Luke have in this scenario?
I just don't know, because, like, you know, right now the way I teach and the way I structure my, like, relaxed time in ratio to that is, like, I mean, I've learned a lot over the years from teaching, and one of the lessons I've had to learn is when to not try. And that's a hard thing to
with teaching.
Yeah. Because there's a reality. Like, I sometimes teach 10 students in a row, and private lessons are.
Well, you teach, like, what age range do you teach? Because that makes a huge difference in how you approach it.
And the range is partly the problem. I can't get on one wavelength. Like, I'm often teaching, like,
oh, you jump around
4-year-old piano lessons, and then
that's rough, dude.
You know,
it's rough enough even like at
someone in college.
Yeah, even at the college, that's rough, because even at the college level, like, at any given moment, like next week, I'm doing individual conferences where I meet with students one-on-one.
Yeah,
and even then, where they're all, I mean, you have some students who are, you know, seniors or whatever, but like most of my students are freshmen, sophomore, but they're, even as just freshmen, sophomores, their individual needs are so different from one to the next. So jumping from like a grades, like you say, like a fourth grader or however old to college level, that's a big shift. That's a big adjustment, because at any given age level, you're going to find the needs of like what these students need to accomplish versus maybe what they think they're trying to accomplish might be very different from one student to the next.
I just mentioned it earlier that, like, I think a big component to teaching is empathy.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key, like, starting point in a lot of ways. And if you don't have that,
it's especially difficult because the idea, and this is often not the case, but it's the idea that as a teacher, you're an expert, right? So basically, as a good teacher, I'm just going to use the specific example of trumpet playing, which is what I do. So I know something feels easy and is easy for me on trumpet now, and I'm looking at someone who can't do it.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to try and figure out what is stopping them from doing it, I have to, like, put myself in the state of mind of someone who can't do it.
Well, that sounds pretty expert to me.
No, what I'm saying is that's a hard thing to learn how to do. Is to, like, genuinely empathize and figure out.
But my point is,
how are they seeing this?
But that's more.
I see it as going, and they see it as like, what the fuck do I?
But that's
even
to
do?
me, in terms of teaching, like, that's more important than being an expert or whatever.
I would say so.
Whatever you would define as an expert. You know, one thing that comes up. It's funny too, because I was talking to somebody earlier today about this. I keep forgetting the phrase, but it's this term for when you think that, like, you're a fraud at something. Where, like, I got to look it up, but it's basically this idea where people are like, oh, you're like an expert, you're good at this, and you're like, no, I know nothing.
Sure.
You know, you devalue yourself, and I do that a lot myself, and
it's healthier to err on that side than to be like,
I think so, as long as you don't let it
just please call me Dr. Expert.
Dr. Sir Esquire, please. Well, as long as you don't let it, like, bring you down or, like, destroy you or whatever, like, negatively, as long as it doesn't turn dark.
As long as you don't have an inferiority complex.
Yeah, where it hinders your abilities.
In other words, know your competence.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
honestly, like, know it honestly. Don't know it inflated or deflated.
Well, and part of that is recognizing that you don't know everything, right? And so, like, students will come to me and they'll...
For you, yeah.
Well, especially for me. But students will come to me, like, all the time, and they'll be like... Not all the time. All the time.
Trump,
every time.
all the time?
All the time.
Every
all
kid.
The students, every last one, they love me.
All the kids in...
They hate you, the losers.
China.
But they, they'll say, I can't believe, like, you know so much, like, you're such a good writer, because I'll, like, show them, like, sometimes in office hours we'll get off on tangents and we'll start exploring things and different ideas. You go off on things
and they're like, oh, you can riff.
Yeah, or I'll show them, like, some of my own writing and works, and they're like, wow, you're such like a great writer and blah blah blah. And, like, honestly, to me, I'm like, I'm not a good writer, like, I'm a terrible writer. And the thing that I tell them is, and this has, like, become so true over the years, and I think it's kind of at the core of my teaching philosophy, maybe, which is, and I tell them this directly. I say, you only think I'm a better writer than you because I've been failing at it longer than you have.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that's true of, like, any skill, right? Like, you could probably say the same thing about trumpet. Like, the only way you get better is to learn from your mistakes or learn from trial and further practice, right?
I mean, literally, there's a cool definition of practicing.
Yeah.
And you could put this onto other things. It just happens to map onto, like, the motor skill performance of playing an instrument.
Right, which is very specific.
And here's the definition. It's like a cool sentence, and I say it to, like, advanced enough students when, like, I think they can handle it. So it's practicing is the purposeful repetition of accuracy.
Oh, I like that. Well,
So-
if you're teaching, it depends on what you're teaching. What if you're teaching improv?
Well,
The replication of fucking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the idea is, like,
What if you're trying to teach people how to test things or how to test failure points for metals and stuff? What if you're teaching metal fatigue test?
you got me there. My definition for little Bobby in 4th grade playing trumpet really doesn't carry as much weight as I thought it used to.
Or as the local
Little
improv
Bobby.
class would lead you to
Little
believe.
Bobby fucking up trumpet.
I'm gonna slip in my first funny teaching story. I had a kid
we
show
haven't seen any
up,
of those.
like a young trumpet player, and he was clearly wearing his dad's sneakers. And I was like,
wait, because they were just too big?
they were gigantic. They looked like clown sneakers on him.
That's awesome.
And I was like, what's up with your shoes? Like,
Wait, you actually opened with that?
oh yeah. By the way, like, one of the ways
That's great,
I've learned
dude.
to maintain a healthy, good energy with teaching kids
Yeah, you mean
is to
sanity.
just play with them. Like, I just make it goofy. Like, they're tripping balls. Kids
Yeah.
are just tripping their
Yeah.
balls,
Right.
their kid balls off. And
Yeah, Luke's like,
I shouldn't have
going
said
a
that.
bad direction here. Change tact.
No, but
Hard to port.
I see what you're saying. Like,
Yeah,
you need,
so
you
you
need to
kinda-
be able to do that,
yeah,
like,
just get silly and, like,
while asserting, like, authority or expertise.
especially like in the
yeah.
beginning of a lesson.
Yeah, sure.
Kids walk in and they're getting their instrument out, and you're just kind of asking them, like, what'd you learn in school? Like, oh, you're talking about the dinosaurs? Have you heard that thing about, like, blah? And you just do something random for a few minutes, and it gets their brain, like, clear a little bit.
Or and furthermore, it gets them thinking, like, cool, like, pointing
Sure.
at you, like,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, he's cool.
Yeah.
And so I say, what's up with your shoes? Like, those look, like, gigantic. Are those, like, your dad's shoes? He's like, no, they're mine. And I'm like, really?
I'm not
Like,
buying it.
I just, that doesn't seem reasonable. He's like, I got big feet. I'm like, no, you got big shoes on. And then I thought to myself, does he have that kind of, like, small hand complex, like the lawyer from Always Sunny or some shit like that?
Oh, he's got, like, a small foot complex.
So then,
Yeah.
and this is one of my favorite things about teaching kids is, like, when you ask them a question, when you talk to most adults, you expect an answer that makes sense and satisfies what your question really was. So I asked him one more time. I was like, but those shoes are gigantic. They have to be, like, about a size 12.
Oh, wow.
Like, are those your dad's shoes? Like, what is going on with that? And his response was, I don't do half sizes. And I was like, All right. Well, looks like your trumpet's ready to go. Let's play a C scale.
I don't do half
I don't
sizes.
do half sizes.
What's the translation for that?
I don't have one.
Maybe he just decided that, and he was at like a 6.5, and he's like, "Well, I can't do that anymore. I'm a full number
I'm a full
guy."
12.
So the
I round up to
only
dozens
size
That's what he should have said. I round
the
up to
only
dozens.
size shoe in the house is a 12. That's even. You know, I guess that's my shoe
Don't
size
do
now.
halves.
Yeah.
So you,
Maybe he is 12, and he thinks that your shoe size and your
Is
age
your
should be
age,
linked.
yeah.
Maybe some kid told him that. Remember, you used to just make shit up as a kid, or a kid would
crazy.
make something up and just come into school and tell you it. Like,
Right, yeah.
like, if you pee inside a girl, she'll get pregnant. And you're like, yeah, that's totally how it happens.
That was a classic
Sure.
middle school
Checks
question.
out,
You would
yeah.
say, like, how do you know if you're peeing inside of a girl? And they're like, oh, like, there's a shutoff valve. I'm like, is
Yeah.
there?
Oh,
good question.
I just want to be sure. Is there a button I need to press?
That's got to
or-
be the
Yeah.
worst thing to teach is, like teaching, like, the
Sex ed?
the sex ed to, like, middle school
That's
kids.
what I've always wondered. Like, what kind of person do you have to be to do that?
You just have to go through the curriculum and not... what I'm trying to say is you
No,
do
'cause
it
I-
without being a real
no,
teacher.
no, 'cause
Like,
I
you just read it, and then whether they understand or not, you kind of just move
No,
on,
but I feel like because I remember like
Now you throw a bunch of frozen bananas on the desk, a pile of condoms, and you go.
no, because I remember it.
frozen bananas.
Frozen bananas. I remember like
Yeah.
health class in like grade school, and it was like I don't know if it was like the best class I had, but I think it was the most like there was something about it where like just like the teacher, like I didn't even really like my health teacher in grade school, but like I kind of like he was the one that I had the least problem with.
No, I know what you. I was half kidding. Like, I'm sure lots of people teach that subject completely legitimately, and it's a need to teach subject because you can't really guarantee that they're going to get information like that from home, I guess, right?
Well,
you know how you can have safe sex, Luke? No sex, you whore. Why don't you wait till you're married?
can we bring
not an issue.
Johnny in for our health seminar?
I feel like he'd be better in Joe's writing seminar than in the middle school health seminar.
I would say so. Maybe start him in at the college writing level.
yeah.
This first thing,
got
Joe, if you're going to
promoted.
have me be, if
Yeah.
I'm going to be a guest lecturer,
Yeah.
first person that takes their phone out, I'm throwing my coffee on them.
It like in their eyes.
In there, yeah, like front row, you take your phone out, I'm throwing my hot coffee on your chest and face. That's okay, right?
I sure.
Because think about it, you sacrifice one for the good of the herd. Everyone else is paying attention for the rest of the
You know, I
lecture.
always had
that guy
greater
might
good.
need medical
I
attention.
always had a thing that I wanted to do, but I never did, which was on the first day of class when I go over the syllabus, just like, say go through the policy and say, oh yeah, and zero tolerance for like taking out your cell phones and being on your cell phones, because you always say that, and then like students inevitably do.
It's like Obama's red line in Syria. It's like, what are you going to do? Like, they crossed the red
Ooh,
line.
hot
and
take.
You did shit.
Wow, you just
Whoa,
went
Luke,
hot
hot
with that.
take.
Yeah, hot take, Luke, right here. But yes,
You
exactly.
Support, you support.
It's like, Joe, either you're going to go to war with Syria and fucking kick that student out, or you're going to bitch out.
No, so to your point, Luke. So my the thing I always
high
wanted-
stakes.
the thing I always wanted to do was like say that like, and they're like, yeah, whatever, and then 5 minutes later have a plant in the class. Like, this was easier like 5 years ago when I had friends who were a little younger. Just have like a grad student like plant in the class and have them take out like an old phone that they've decommissioned and just like be
You
texting.
offered me $10 to do this.
Oh, I
once.
did?
Yeah.
Okay, so Luke knows my plan. So, and then you say, excuse me, are you on your phone? And you're like, sorry, I'll put it away.
I just kind of like, I don't even like get back at you too aggressively.
Yeah.
I very regularly use it, and then
yeah, and then you're like,
then
oh,
comply
oops.
with what
yeah,
you
you're
say,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, sorry, man. And then I say, oh, can I see that? Like, and you're like, I guess. And I go over and I just smash it on the floor, stomp on it, and say, get the fuck out of my class.
And I do it.
And you're just like, and you just like shit your way out of the classroom. And then I say,
Knowing you're buying me beers later.
knowing you're buying me beers later, and then I say, so anyways, the first research paper we'll be doing, and then just
and
like,
just totally snap back. See, I remember that idea, Joe, and do you remember my suggestion,
Yes.
which I still think would work better?
Wait, can I guess it, Johnny?
Yeah.
Is it
I think
the roommate in college and the firecracker thing?
It's along the same line, but no,
what
this
sentence is that?
I'll get into that. It's a way for people going off to college,
To
as I
assert
actually never
control
did,
over their
how to deal with your roommate. Establish control. It's like prison. You got to establish it early. Who's
But
top bunk.
it's slightly different
Anyways,
ways.
this was,
Yeah, go on.
I always thought Joe should have me do that same thing, but instead of smashing my phone, be like, oh, could you come up and give me my phone? And you'd be like, do I have to? And you'd be like, you get it back after class. And then I come up and I give you your phone, and you have a fishbowl on your desk the first day, and you just take it and drop it in the bowl and go, and I go, what the fuck? And you go, oh, it's fine. You can take it back after class.
That's
And then I just
hilarious.
have to go sit back down while everyone, but that way the phone is there being ruined. Like the first couple minutes, people are like, oh shit. And then like halfway through the class, like, yeah, that phone's definitely fucking
I have-
ruined.
Yeah,
I have
if
quite-
it had any chance, it was
And then,
like 10
I
minutes
take
ago.
the phone out and shake it off and be like, sorry, and leave. Like that class would be eating out of your hand.
I have questions for you. First of all, are there fish in the bowl? And second of all,
Yeah.
Do you carry it in with you?
What if what, I just bring a fishbowl in on the desk? And third of all, what happens
Yeah,
if
you
they
set
have a
it up.
waterproof case?
Ooh, good
I
question.
had this idea before that was a thing, but obviously we would have a phone out of the case so people could see it was unprotected.
Yeah.
Oh no, you know what you do? You put it in
Flip phone.
you put it in
Easy.
the bowl, and then the asshole student comes up and you're like, oh, good thing. He's like, good thing I have a waterproof case, and you're like, yeah, great point. And then you put it on the desk and pull out a hammer and smash it.
Oh, you'd be like, oh, really? Good
Yeah.
to know.
See,
and then
but Joe,
just
you're
smash
going
it, and
for
then
the-
do Joe's thing.
You're going
anyway.
for the version where like
I'm going for the
you
emotional trauma.
You snap into a violent craze for a moment. And
Yeah,
then
now
snap
you're
right
actually.
back.
Yeah.
Now
Johnny's
you're actually
version is just
terrorizing.
a nonchalant drop into
Yeah,
a
no, I would
fishbowl.
get fired for doing like most of that. Maybe not the fishbowl, but the other things.
The fishbowl, because it's a plant. I'm not going to complain. No one could complain on my behalf. And if they did and someone looked into it, you could be like, yeah, it was a teaching exercise. I was going to bring it up later in the
That's
semester.
the great thing
They-
about college. You could actually probably get away with that in college, like grade school.
People get away with a lot in college.
Well, because it's actually like pretty much contractually obligated that like you're like not only like do you not talk to parents, like you're not allowed to talk to parents. So like
Yeah, that
if,
makes sense.
if the student has, because they're adults, so it's like if the student has a problem with you, they got to take it up with you or take it up with administration. So that's the other great thing about
the only
teaching
way you
college.
would deal with the parents if they were like a Britney Spears type where their parents had conservatorship over them, right? Like they don't have their
Oh,
own
sure.
legal power of attorney. Like they have to be represented. It can't just be like,
No.
my son is my child.
No,
like
when
my-
students want to like get shit done, like if they really want to change shit, they have to do it themselves. They can. Like a student can complain enough to the right people to pretty much get like a lot of what they want, but they have to do it. Like they can't.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing is at the college level, they don't realize that they can do that. But yeah, I mean, if you stomp your feet enough, like eventually it's like anything else. People are just going to be like, will you go away if I give you what you want, you know?
Yeah. See, I like the cost benefit equation. How much is this? What is this going to cost us to just? Okay, yeah, we'll just do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a factor for sure.
But I also like my idea because you could make that. You really could bring it up. You could be like, all right, we're going to go over suspension of disbelief this class, like towards the end of the semester.
Yeah,
and be like, do you
totally.
remember that student that I ruined his phone and then he never came
he
back?
dropped out of class.
And he dropped out of class. Guess what? And I come and be like, he's actually my brother. So this is the script, and show them the script and be like, why was it believable?
Oh.
What parts, like the hits and all that?
Are you caught up
you
on
could actually
Westworld?
make a. No, is this Westworldian?
I'm
Should
not-
I,
I'm not-
I'll watch an episode right after this.
I'm
How
not.
about
I'm
that?
not gonna say. What do you? Have you watched this season?
I haven't seen any of it. I've seen the movie
good,
from
dude.
the. I saw the sequel to the movie, original
Future
movie
World?
from the '70s. Future World.
I haven't
yeah.
seen that. You saw season one
amazing.
though, right?
No,
Wait,
never
really?
seen the show.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I'll go watch it right after this.
You told me you've been watching it. You liar.
I guess so. Kara's been watching it.
Yeah, I've talked to Kara about this. Have you? Have you guys been pretending like you're watching the show?
She's seen it. She's
It's
watched
a great
it
show.
without
It's
me.
the best
No, I
show.
haven't
Like,
seen
share, and subscribe. It's #1 rated.
Yeah, she sold it to me on Simulation Theory. I just haven't had a chance.
Oh yeah. Oh, I got to talk to her about
Actually
that. Yeah,
watch.
it's huge. It's huge. Yeah. So, I like your method, Johnny, because I think it's a little. There's a subtlety to it. There's nuance to it.
Yeah,
So, Joe, I
but
want
it's you still have the psychological terror aspect of it.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
like
more,
that too,
It's
but
more.
that's-
It's just more understated because the physical violence is also
Yeah.
much more subtle.
Fair enough.
I was going to ask you this in the beginning, Joe.
Yeah.
But I think I realized, like, over time, I've come up with different definitions of this, and I sort of become different versions of this depending on the student.
Yeah.
But what is your definition of teaching? In whatever way you want to interpret that, because, like, you could do
Yeah.
it from the super zoomed out thing to a more localized thing. But I find that an interesting question because I grew up, and I think this is an experience that most people have had, which is that by the time you've gone through a certain amount of schooling, I did high school, 4 years of undergrad, and 2 years of grad school.
Yeah.
You've had hundreds and hundreds of teachers, and you can only usually remember 2 or 3 that
Stand out.
had an impact,
Yeah.
stand out. There's a Neil deGrasse Tyson video on this that I'll link in the episode notes. He talks about this, and he says, like what made those 2 to 3 teachers of those hundreds stand out.
Yeah.
And it's often not how famous they were or what skills they had and talked about. It was more the passion that they talked about the thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of what we've pretty much alluded to already. And it's funny you say that because this comes up in a lot of, like, when I apply to teach places, like something that I talk about, and it's this exact idea of kind of inspiring interest. And I think that's more important than actual teaching.
It's like if you can light a fire, that's more important because then it will learn to sustain itself and burn itself.
Exactly, and that's something I write about, how I was never, especially in grade school. In college, I was much better. I was like, I was pretty good in college, but in high school, I was not a good student in high school. Like, I just wasn't smart. Like, I didn't get good grades. I tried moderately hard, but like I wasn't, top tier by any means. But what I write about is, and the example I use is a totally non-writing example, and the reason why I use it is because it stands out to me as a situation where I remember being in earth science class. I don't know if you had the same experience. I think Johnny might have, but you might have had the same teacher as me. But I remember the earth science teacher brought in this long table, and it was covered in sand, and there was a hose attached to the top, and he would turn on the hose and it would create a river through the sand, and you would put Monopoly houses all along the riverbank, and you would have to take bets on whose house would survive the longest, and he would increase the stream like over the course of the class, and eventually the river would like shift and erode, and the houses would collapse into the river.
The way a river snakes, right?
And so
did it form the S, like snaking up a river?
It formed like but it like within that, because there were so many houses on it, you could like point to so many micro patterns, and he went.
I think I remember he started with an S and it turned into a full oxbow, as happens because that's what water does.
Yeah, it was really cool, and he went into all these like theories, not just of like that, but like talking about like gravity and like velocity and just like
and that we see this pattern on Mars.
Yeah, all these other exactly. And so what that did was like that got me so interested in like those ideas of science that I started, like that was one of the main things that kickstarted me getting really interested in science.
He showed you something that you can do in a classroom could translate to how we know a planet out there that nobody
and more importantly, how and why I should question other things.
Sure. So the curiosity itself.
Yeah, the curiosity
he used
itself.
A specific example, but what he did was he lit the flame of your curiosity.
Yeah. So to me
kept it going.
So to me that's like the core of teaching and what I sort of value as a teacher, and what I try to, I guess, inspire as well, as much as I can, and in different ways and in very different contexts at very different moments. But yeah, it's to try to inspire interest and inspire. Again, that's why I in my classes, I always come back to this idea of relevancy. Well, how is this relevant to your real life? Yes, I'm making you write a research paper, but like, why is it important that you need to know how to justify your opinions with actual?
How many teachers don't
substantiated facts? Like,
don't know that or don't care to go through the effort
to make those connections.
That.
Yeah, to show why those connections are so important. Another one that we do is, or that I do is, I have them analyze opinion articles from the school newspaper. And what's fun about that is that they read these articles, and I would say not most of the time, but very commonly they notice that they agree with the premise but they think that it's a very poorly written argument. And it's because, of course, it's just written by like undergrad students who, had an opinion and like they didn't have anybody review it.
Yeah.
Like they didn't, you know what I mean? Like they're just like
it's filled with leaks.
I used to write
itself.
And that's not a knock on them. I used to write for the undergrad paper, and like my articles weren't great either. The ideas behind them maybe were great ideas, but that's what I make them point out. But they're confused by it going in. They're like,
right,
how can I agree with this opinion, but like so disagree with how the argument's made? And I say, that's a great point. So what you want to do is point out what those problems are and how addressing those and how fixing those would make a more substantial argument,
higher resolution argument.
That's a perfect way to put it. That would appeal to who? You have to ask, like, who are you trying to convince what of? Like, if you're just pandering to the people who already agree with that opinion, okay, that maybe confirms their point of view, but what are you doing to really, again, get that higher resolution picture for people who either A, don't agree with what is being said initially, or B, maybe a lot of people in the middle who aren't sure what they believe or who think they know what they believe, but it turns out if you can present a cogent enough argument with clear enough data and evidence and reasoning, they say, oh, that actually alters what I thought
It's
about
almost
that.
like peristalsis. Like if somebody's in an altering opinion and you're going to convince them and work them through your writing to be in your opinion,
Yeah.
it's not like you're going to say one sentence and they'll be like, oh, gee, I was wrong about everything. Boom.
Yeah, right.
So you have to massage them there. And one of the
Yeah.
ways you do that is you acknowledge the things that they think already are true.
Yeah.
You acknowledge, let's say it's not true, right?
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge why they think it's true.
Yeah.
Or if there's any truth there,
Yeah.
but then put it back in the context of like, well, that's not the full picture.
And that's what I think that's true too. Like that's what I really enjoy about teaching is that like, those sort of realizations. Like I was working on that earlier today. We were working on research papers, and as they go through, and they say a common question is, they say like, well, what's your argument? Like, what do you want to prove about this topic? And they say this thing. I say, well, what about the counter perspective or counter argument or counter viewpoint or
I've also
other
heard
way
it
of approaching
described
that?
as counterfactual.
Yeah.
So
totally.
you say like, oh, like it's so much better.
Depending on the
that Trump
topic,
won,
yeah.
and somebody else is like, oh, would have been so much better if Hillary won. It's like, okay, like those are two opinions. Like, let's go through the details. We have a
Yeah.
lot of evidence now because like the timeline with
Yeah.
Trump, but not many people spend the counterfactual time to go through the details of like Hillary would have been better.
Yeah.
I'm not making a comment on that even. I'm just saying like to put yourself in the debate form of like one might say this,
Yeah.
one might say that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's a more, as Stephen Fry said in this Jordan Peterson debate
Yeah.
recently, he said angels are able to fly because they take themselves so lightly. And the idea is like you're never taking any opinion that you're considering so heavy that it pulls you down to the ground
Yeah.
and pins you down.
Well, and you have to take into account like the reason why you have to take into account that counter viewpoint or alternate perspective is because again, like who are you trying to you have to ask like who am I trying to convince of what exactly?
Yeah.
And until you do that, it can kind of be an exercise in futility. But I notice as we do that, like students realize like it clicks and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like of course
It can click, yeah.
Yeah, of course I would address like this other perspective. And like at first they're like, like why would I even address that? It disagrees with my point. And I'm like, well, why is that a problem? Like, is it flawed
Maybe
information?
you have a bad point.
Or maybe that.
Yeah.
And like you change that's another thing too. They're like, well, I'm trying to argue this, but like there's all this good data on the other side. I'm like, maybe
Then maybe the other side has a point.
or and then they're
Yeah.
like so the other side's true or right, and I'm like maybe neither side's right.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a compromise in the middle that makes way more sense and nobody's willing to think
Maybe
about
it's one
it
of
that
those
way.
complicated
Yeah.
emergent things in like in the human realm that like is actually not reducible right now and like
Yeah.
can't be described as like definitely this or definitely that.
And
there's
this-
a lot of fucking those
And this is a skill
category type
and
things.
this is a skill that like is so needed right now. Like
it's lacking.
it's so lacking
Maybe
in
social
like
media has a factor in that because people get less social cues from
well,
people.
and so much of
in
the
the real
data and
world.
information that people find is so baseline or it's so misappropriated. It's
You know
so
what
out
it
of
is
context.
For me? It's just so because I have students of all ages from like really 4-year-olds to high school kids is my normal range. and I definitely
Can a 4-year-old play trumpet?
After they take Luke's
that young
class,
is
like,
for,
share, and subscribe.
Piano.
Oh,
So I
okay,
teach
that makes
piano
sense.
and trumpet. Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think I'm coordinated enough
No, you
as
can't
an
really
adult to play
start
trumpet.
playing trumpet until your teeth come in, like
That checks out.
Makes sense.
4th, 5th grade.
Yeah, fair enough.
Even then, you can't play it still.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's still a nightmare.
I can't play trumpet, and I have all my teeth. So.
You know, I'd be curious about that. It
most
might
of
be a
them.
good experiment. I should try and like teach one of my adult friends trumpet and see how long it takes.
Can you teach me trumpet?
Luke, I was just about to volunteer. I would totally buy it. You could get.
You
like,
might
a really
volunteer,
shitty one for,
Johnny,
like,
but I'm
$20,
gonna
right?
trumpeteer. So
Oh, he's
Ooh.
ready. He beat me there. You win,
So,
Joe.
like, I have so many different teacher hats that I put on,
Yeah.
and like, just to give you an example, like today I had 2 students today. One of them was this geeky 6th grader, and I like geeky kids because, like, when I talk about something like physics of sound, to talk about
They nerd out.
how the length of the trumpet changes, and that they kind of respond and nerd out with me.
that's cool. Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, cool, that's the angle I can connect with you on. Like, he was a zombie to me
Yeah.
until I brought up physics, and now
Yeah.
he was, like, engaging.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if I come at you from the science angle, you can connect what you're already interested in and see that music's interesting from
Yeah.
that perspective, too.
Yeah.
And then maybe I can convince you, like, of other things, you know, like musical, artistic, whatnot. And then, you know, I'll have really, like, stereotypical cool kids who, like, don't think it's cool to try at things, or
Yeah.
you know, that kind of
Yeah.
thing where it's like, oh, why would I, you know, make a beautiful sound? It sounds like you're talking about emotion, like, you know, like,
Yeah.
and you just have to, like, find a way,
Bro, you
like,
talking about emotion, bro?
I'll just talk to them for a while and be like, yo, I'm not cool. Like, I did your whole thing. I was like, the character you're being, I don't say this directly, but, like, I try
Yeah.
to, like, hint at
What
this.
if you did though?
Like, the character you're being is not a character you can be in the world really well. Like, you can be.
you can. People do it. It's
I mean,
just
you can work at a gas station and be that character.
no. That's what I mean. That's a
But-
burden to bear for
but
sure.
it's going to be a heavier burden than
Yeah.
it rewards you. So I was
Yeah.
like,
It's
you
a
could
real
also.
commitment.
Yeah,
I remember
for
what I
sure.
said to the kid. I was like, you know, this is just a random thing you're doing, trumpet, and you could do it seriously or not. Like, it doesn't really affect me. I was like, but, like, I just want to make sure you know, like, whether you pick up chess tomorrow or trumpet or a foreign language.
Or working in a gas station, you elitist Northeast fuck. Sorry, go ahead. Apparently, there's something wrong with that.
I try to express to kids, like, and that I'm not.
I see what you're saying.
I'm
yeah.
not a salesman for trumpet because,
Yeah.
like, it's not going to really affect me.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you choose.
Yeah.
Right.
But that if you did an hour of work on any one thing
Yeah.
every day, you would be awesome at it and be the best possibly in New York State by the time you got to middle school, just because you actually devoted focus time to it every day.
Yeah.
And then I say, so that's one thing you could be.
Yeah.
Let's say we cut that hour down to 10 minutes, but you still do it every day. I was like, you'll definitely be really good at this one exercise I assigned you this week.
I actually really like that as like, yeah, this is how you're God, but you're not. So,
But you could be.
you could be.
You could be.
But you're not.
So just be 10%, which is like
But
way
you're a fat,
percent
lazy
less
piece
than
of
failing.
shit. So let's just be the 10% God.
I know there's because like thinking about teaching philosophy, like there's a lot to be said there where you're like, you don't have to be perfect, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying that
You have to put in some effort.
I'm sort of saying that, like, you know, whatever you put effort into now,
You get out later, right?
you are really your time is going to be well invested.
Yeah.
Like-
that's cool. I like that.
because you're in 6th grade. Let's use that example.
Yeah. You
have-
barely know you're
in
alive.
4 years, you're still not worried about having to be a fully grown adult. So you just have all this time to shape your neurons to be expert level at any number of things.
You should say that exactly, and they'll just be like,
oh, believe
"I'm
me,
making
I
a
do.
dummy face right now."
Well, yeah. I mean, if I understood that life is just like the ultimate video game, that I can't. There's no save file.
Oh God, that's freaky.
I would
Don't
have
trip
tried
on the
way
cord.
harder.
Johnny, you
I would
nonchalantly
have tried way
put it that
harder.
way,
as
but
a
that's
kid.
pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have tried much harder as a child, But
Wait, so
I
there is a
didn't.
save button?
No, there isn't. But, well, not for you guys, but
Oh God, he is a genie.
Unlimited powers, tiny living conditions.
yeah, but so you get the unlimited power still.
And you get your lamp rubbed.
If you're lucky. No, it really is. I forgot what we were talking about. What? I just spaced. I need a beer.
You're teaching stories, Johnny. Your best.
Yeah,
teaching
no,
story.
like life is just a big video game. And that's why
talking
video
about?
games were
It is,
More,
though.
like,
I honestly use that example today.
like as I'm getting older. The video games I find more interesting are like the physics based ones.
Yeah, have
and
you
how
ever played
realistic
World
they
of
are.
Goo? Shout out to World of Goo. It's an amazing physics game for like the new fancy like Nintendo thing.
Are they our sponsor now?
God, I don't think so.
Johnny, have you played Universe Sandbox?
On your computer, yeah.
Dude, you got to get it.
So
Yeah.
I would say on a zoomed out level, like if I say what's the most common theme behind like how I'm approaching teaching, is that I'm trying to get people to learn how to think and not what to think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, fair enough.
I'm almost constantly asking questions as a teacher.
Yeah,
And then
as you should be.
rephrasing the question with more leading, rephrasing the question with more leading.
Well, do you feel like
Meaning like, well, what part of the airflow
Yeah.
might you want to
Well,
be, like,
I'm
and really lead
I'm
them
curious
on?
about that too, because you feel like, especially because you teach, because I teach like mostly college, but you
And
kind
mostly in groups, right?
yeah.
Or
well,
how often
well,
is
no, I
one-on-one for you?
No, it's one because I do a lot with like individual conferences,
Like
and that
office
sort of
hours?
thing. No, I mandate them. Like I'll cancel class to like say this is your attendance for the
Oh.
week. You have to meet with me like for an hour.
Oh, okay.
So like I force like one-on-one
You get a
meetings.
real sense of their
Yeah.
ideas and what they're going to write about.
It's like it's such an underrated process because that's the only real way to like get to the truth of what they're about is working one-on-one with them.
Yeah. Otherwise, they can hide in the herd.
Totally. Yeah, and they do. They
Yeah.
will.
Most
Yeah.
people do. It's safe.
Yeah. But do you find that you learn, because I find like working at least at the college level that like I learn a lot working at the college level from like just the questions they ask me and like the techniques and different ideas that they come up with. Like do you, because I know what you do is different with music and at a different age level. Do you find that as well? Like do you learn anything from like
So I would say
teaching?
the biggest thing I learned from teaching is forcing myself to make explicit what was implicit. Forcing
Yeah.
myself to
But does that help
kind
you?
of what you were
does
saying
that help
before.
you as because it helps me as a writer? Does it help you as a musician, like as an actual
I
musician?
think it does. It helps me understand what I know more.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a difference between knowledge and understanding. And this is actually a category in the music world. You have a type of a musician who is really, really talented at their instrument and perhaps like weirdly talented and super skilled. Got
Yeah.
to the top of whatever hierarchy in music they were
Well,
climbing
you'll
right
find
quick.
you'll find that in a lot of crafts. Yeah.
And it's the type of person where it comes very natural to them, but they're not often very good teachers. They still might do it. And so much of the music world, I think, the teaching in the music
That's
world is
interesting,
filled with really good performers and some really good educators.
That's interesting because in writing people are like amazing teachers. Just I find
might
in general.
be more required, and I
That's
think
so weird.
I think I know why, because as a music teacher, I run this experiment myself sometimes. So you're teaching a lesson, you have your trumpet right there, and they're playing something. Now they finish, right? And
Yeah.
it's now your job to say, here's what was good, what was bad.
Yeah.
Maybe they did something totally wrong. Maybe it was really good, and you're trying to figure out what to even say, right?
Yeah.
And so the default move for some teachers is to just play the thing and then say, do it again, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
in other
not
words,
much teaching,
Hear
though.
me play it, but in music, sometimes it's a technique of teaching where,
Interesting.
and I learned this from the Inner
Yeah.
Game of Tennis, James Galloway. It's a sports book, but musicians love it because it's all about perhaps you actually teach more when it comes to the motor skills of something when you don't tell the person what they're about to do. You let it happen at the subconscious level naturally. Later on,
correct it.
Later on, they might find out about it, but you're trying to get their subconscious brain to copy what you did without the conscious tension and slow processing speed. If
Monkey see, monkey do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
monkey see, monkey do.
I think it's really different.
I'm trying to talk about this in some kind of like blah blah blah. Johnny's like,
it's been
that's
done
just a
before, Luke.
classic
Yeah.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
We've covered this.
I think writing's just different because with music, I mean, like when I sit down with a student and I look at like a paper or whatever they're working on, a lot of times like I explore options with them. Like I don't tell them what's right or wrong, or like what's that's actually something that I tried, and I think this is pretty much universal with like most other writing instructors I've spoken with, where they try to really dispense with the idea of correct or incorrect, right or wrong, which is a thing like when you get into like grammar or technical stuff or just things that work or don't work thematically. But you also tried to you try to explain the idea that it's more about effective versus ineffective. And
Sure.
like, yeah, if you do this, if you go this road or this route, or you try this technique or this style, it may be more effective or less effective depending on what else you do. So it's kind of like a ripple effect, and you can kind of point out how like whichever stream you sort of lean towards, like, well, it's going to lead you down this way, and like then you have all these other possibilities. And there's something very like intuitive about it that like it's also conducive to practice though. Like it does take a lot of practice.
A lot of those avenues you're talking about where you're saying, oh, if I decide to do this in this plot that I'm writing, then all these other things happen.
Yeah.
Those can go very subconscious level. You're still
well, once you
being
internalize
guided
them,
by them, but you're not necessarily, because I think this is true for thinking too, but in terms of pure input into your brain, you get vastly more bits of information into your full brain than you're consciously aware of. It's something like 400 billion bits of information per second go into your brain, and you're only aware of like
much.
8 million or something up like that. So it's like, I think the same thing's true of thinking, and thinking is sort of like a layer that's there that you can scratch away at and learn about the more you do.
It's funny too,
but it still influences you.
Yeah, it's funny too to think about how like there's technique, and like there's technique in writing too that's you could point to and say like, well, that's technically correct or incorrect according to the rules. Like you would say that in music, right? But like there's also artistry to it.
Sure.
There's nuance. And like that's everything. Like I always tell students that it's actually funny. My grading rubric is actually weighted differently. So like grammar and form and style and punctuation they're worth less than content and effectiveness and like having clear thoughts and original thoughts and relating them in an effective manner. Like whether that's like a personal narrative or a research paper or an analysis paper, like whatever it is, like making that interesting and engaging and original and like trying to convince different audiences, like I rank that much more highly, and that's all nuance. That's all like the artistry of it. So it's like, and it's the same in music, right?
I mean, more or less, like, I guess like
like you have those options is what I'm saying. Like
I regularly ask my students, I've gotten good at what questions I ask. And that's kind of what you were saying before when you're like, is this effective? It's that's a heavy question to ask, and it covers most of what I care about.
That's harder than asking, is it right or wrong? Is it effective or ineffective, right? Yeah, that's much more difficult.
And so I'll often, you can ask that after a performance, like, was that effective? And what does it mean to be effective? It means you have a desired outcome. Like, because you're asking, did I achieve my desired outcome? It's like,
totally.
Oh, you just played that, and you didn't even have a desired outcome, right?
Yeah.
Whether if you're writing a story and you don't have a desired outcome, it's like, well, okay, maybe that's okay, but like probably you should have some kind of like thing you're going for, even if it's like this undefinable kind of thing. And so for music, I always ask this question to kids: what's the character of the music? And they're like, what? And I'm like, what's the last book you read in school? I just get
that's
them.
cool.
I'm like, what's
that.
the main character? And describe him.
Yeah.
Tall, lanky, goofy, right? Whatever. I was like, there's a whole character there, right? I was like, so music has characters. Sometimes they're not as detailed as having
really
a name and and a height and all that. But I was like, let me play you a few things.
So how would you describe me in music, Luke?
Yeah, how would you describe Johnny's character in music?
That's tough, man. How deep do you want me to get?
I want you to get down.
I mean, if I was like, if somebody was exposed to a 2-hour movie version of me, like not you that knows me. So.
I would describe you as the dinner plate nipple character.
Okay.
What kind of sentence is that?
I meant musically, but thanks, I guess.
Yeah, how does that translate to trumpet?
Great teaching skills. Like,
No, I've seen your nipples, buddy. They're like dinner plates.
oh, they're pretty big. Yeah, I'll admit it.
Them
here for the
teacup
first time.
saucers, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why my accent went there.
This is the teaching podcast, so they should learn something. If you didn't learn anything else, you've learned that Johnny does have large nipples.
Johnny
There you go.
has teacup plate nipples.
Yeah.
God.
Where were we?
So, for music, the characters, I was just saying, like,
right.
you know, they could be like
Back to your Podigy or whatever the fuck it is. Pedagogy.
podcastery.
Your Adobe Pagoda.
I like
or
how you
whatever.
combine pedagogy with podcast. And you came up with Podjiggy.
That is what we're doing here, right?
No, that's gold, baby.
So,
Oh, baby.
those are my two pillars for teaching when I have to like kind of think about it or recalibrate, because I often have to recalibrate and just kind of redefine for myself, what am I doing?
Yeah,
I'm miserable
definitely,
right
yeah.
now. I have 8 more students to go, and I'm in a really bad place.
When you're in the slog, right?
Yeah, how do I get out of this?
I've been there, dude.
And you know one
I'm
of the
gonna be
tricks
there
I
next
use,
week.
dude?
Yeah.
This is a good trick. I recommend you try it if you've never done it. You're in the slogs. You really just feel like, and it happens
Logan about.
sometimes. You just like start being a jerk to a kid because you're miserable, you know. And one of the ways I work myself out of those states is I pretend like I'm doing a lesson in front of an audience for a job interview.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I pretend, how would I teach if I was trying to be the best? You know, like just trying to not let anything go, have a big window of tolerance where any bullshit that comes my way just swishes right through it, doesn't really affect me, and I move on and keep trying to do what I'm trying to. And it's sort of the fake it till you make it thing. Just faking like I'm doing that. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not shoveling elephant shit right now. I'm just teaching. I can like bring a positive energy, and I can get myself out of it.
Which is actually what I always come back to when I'm like in the slog and I'm like, oh man, like I'm on my 10th student conference of the day. There's
and
like,
it doesn't matter how many coffee you have. It's not
there's
gonna,
6 more to go. Like
gonna
I
help.
gotta take a runny dump. Like this is like a long ass day. I always remember, and I remember thinking this at the time. I think I've told you this story, how I remember I used to work at a country club, and I remember back in college, and I remember one day it was like a rainy day, and they got a new shipment of dirt in because you would fill up these containers with dirt and grass seeds, and like that's what people would fill in the holes on the course with.
Oh, okay.
So they got in a new shipment of dirt, and the guy, it was just rainy, so there was no carts out, so we didn't have to help because we would help people with their bags. So he said, "Oh, go into the back, the service yard, and fill up we got a new shipment of dirt, fill up the bucket and bring it back to the clubhouse," because that's where we filled up the containers. So I went back there, and it was like drizzling lightly, and I get back there to the pile of dirt, and I start shoveling it into the back of this cart, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this dirt smells like shit. And then I'm shoveling for like a few more minutes, and finally one of the service yard guys comes over, or he's doing whatever, and he's like, "Oh, what's up?" And we start talking. I'm like, "Man, this dirt like reeks," because I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we got this new like manure mixed dirt thing," and I'm like, "Huh." And then like I pause like in mid shovel, and I realize to myself, I am literally shoveling shit in the rain for minimum wage.
Yeah.
It can only get better from here. And that's the memory I always come back to whenever I'm like deep in teaching, and I'm like,
You're like, I'm in an office teaching.
Not in the rain shoveling shit for minimum wage.
Yeah.
And it's all, no matter what I've done, and especially teaching, I'm like, you know what? Like, I can make this work. I can make this happen. Like, we'll figure this out. So that's kind of my My go-to. Oh, Johnny's got a new beer here.
Joe, I think the way to say that would be as long as you're making more shit than you're shoveling, you're doing okay.
I would say so. That's
Because
actually...
every once in a while,
I'm gonna
you
put
might have to shovel your own shit.
I don't plan on having a gravestone, but that's what I'm going to put on it.
Really?
I mean, you're essentially shoveling your own shit when you flush a toilet. It's just technology's
That's what
doing
I mean.
the legwork.
That's kind of what
Johnny,
I
have a question for you. What is...
I stepped off for a minute. I don't know.
Johnny,
where we went. Sorry.
so what is your teaching, like, how would you describe... What was the question? What teaching is? You're teaching philosophy?
I was just trying to say, like, what is a definition of teaching
Yeah.
or a philosophy?
So I was trying to think about it while you guys were rambling about yours. And I'm just being honest.
I ramble.
Thank you, Joe.
I've never
And, I was just thinking, like, I was trying to think, well, how can I contribute? Like, do I teach it? Well, I used to teach, like, beginner chess lessons when I was younger. I wasn't very good at it.
Well, why weren't you very good at it? Why do you say that?
Because I wasn't a very good student. I stopped studying a lot, and then I hit a point where students got better than me, so I was like, I should stop doing this. I'm a shitty teacher.
It also takes a certain age to be a good teacher, I think. So at a young age, I felt like a fool teaching. I was teaching by age 19.
Yeah.
But so I was never a good student. I was always a self-learner, so I feel like I'm more perceptive to what I like to refer to as teaching moments, which are what I look for in my life. Even like sometimes you can deal with like a shitty, crass guy. Like think about if you call like, an emergency something, a leak in your apartment, and they call a plumber who's like pissed and annoyed as shit, or is like pissed at your building owner, but not you, And so, like, they might be all crass and shitty and angry and, like, rude or whatever, but they might actually be willing to, like, teach you, I'll tell you what happened. They're fucking this and that and blah, 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 and I'm going to do this. Like, it's an actual teaching moment you could pick. So, like, I think I'm more perceptive of those moments because that's how I've had to learn. And I do have those because I work in, I pour craft beer in one of my jobs. A couple of my jobs. I pour beer, and a lot of people come in and they're new to it. They have no idea. They know what beer they like, but they don't know anything about the world or all these different styles and stuff. And
you only have a 10-second period to connect with them and like actually convince them that you can teach them something.
Well, a lot of them don't want to learn though. Like I had a great example the other day. Let's bring it back to beer. Lady says, I don't like hoppy beers. I don't like anything with hops in it. It's like, okay, well, we have this, that, blah, blah. So, well, let me try that German Pilsner. They had a German Pilsner, and I was like, okay. And so,
plenty of hops in it, just
a lot of hops. They were just, and they put a lot of hops in that compared to some of the other beers she liked. And she's like, oh, it's hoppy? And then she tried it, and she's like, oh, I really like this, and I like this. And she's like, what is that flavor? And I described these like German hops. Noble hops that are these like light. Well, I described the flavor first because I wanted to get her on my side. I was like, oh, this is a teaching moment. I can convince her. I can show her that she does like some hops.
See, that's very good, Johnny. Yeah.
She had something she didn't like. Someone told her it was hops, and she never looked into it. So she just ruled out this whole class of experiences because of that. Yeah. So and then she was like, oh, I don't like, I can't blah, blah. And she's like, oh, I like this. What's this? I was like, well, that like light kind of grassy, like, kind of peppery flavor there, that like peppercorny flavor. That's those Hallertau hops that we got, blah, 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 this and that. And she goes, oh, no, it can't be that. I don't like hops. She said that. She's like, well, it can't be that because I don't like hops. Wow. And stared at me like I was supposed to come up with an answer. Oh, you're right. There are none in there. And I was like, okay, then. And then she just turned and walked away. And it was like she's going to go to the next place and be like, I don't like hoppy beers. And maybe go, if someone cares enough to be like, oh, we'll try all these different things. We'll find you something you like. They're just going to be like, here's our cream ale, or here's our blonde ale. Like, here, just have the light beer we make.
That's instead. The type of student that drives me crazy, because what you did is tried to show her in a graceful way that a category of thinking she had was a little bit off, right? And so what she did, instead of just saying, you know what, I have to let go of that past knowledge and now, think of this in a new way, what she did was insist on holding on to the past knowledge. How could this person in front of me be right about this flavor because I already know I don't like hops? It's like, No, you don't know you know anything. You think
Yeah.
you know things.
That's so funny.
And a lot of what you think you know is probably wrong.
And that's so like what I've been saying all episode is at the core of what I teach is like, why do you believe what you think you believe?
Yeah.
And it's like if you
Some
don't
things
have
you
a
have good reasons for,
and
but
if
others
but
have
if
shit reasons
That's
for.
what I mean. If like your response is to just like ask a dumb question and stare at the person hoping for the answer that you just want to hear, you're not being a good student.
So
You're not being a good person even.
That's why I would say,
dare
like,
to say.
at the core of what it means to be a good teacher is to convince people of that.
Yeah.
To just
That's worthwhile
And how you
questioning,
do that
yeah.
is a graceful thing. It changes each time. Like
You should have splashed the beer in her face, Johnny. You fucked up.
I did. I know when she walked away, I threw it on the back of her legs because she was wearing shorts.
Yeah.
Really?
I was like, "Oh, sorry, no." I would immediately get fired for doing that.
Oh, that's one way.
Can't throw. I've never thrown beer on anybody. That's very frowned upon. You're supposed to sell it, not throw it at people.
In the industry, that's not favored.
It's a general rule. Yeah.
Johnny,
Yeah.
you tried to connect with this woman, and she
But it was
sort
great
of
because
just
she walked
rejected
away.
it.
Yeah, because she was like, "That can't be it," because I don't like hops. And I said, "Okay," and she like kind of nodded, like, "All right then," and then walked away. But her friends, like, I answered their questions, and like they walked away with the thought of like, "Wow, that guy knew a lot about beer, but he was wrong about that one thing because I'm right about it, even though I know I don't know anything about beer." Like she was able to cross all those lines and connect them in her head, or she just didn't think about it, and that happens like. That definitely happens daily to me.
Yeah.
But I just don't
subtext of
really
that-
care.
Isn't the subtext of that just her declaring, like, I'm not a student? In other words, like, I'm not willing to learn new things. I just need to stick with
totally.
what I already know.
Oh yeah,
Right.
she's entrenched and she'll never change.
Well, maybe she will.
Not at this rate.
I mean, never is a strong word, and that comes up to the same thing I was just saying before about when you're in the slums in teaching, and
Slog.
the slog. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
And you sort of
Slums
just
is a
get
different
this,
place to be teaching.
Yeah, that's true. You get this like hopeless feeling where you're like, why should I even try? Like, I just wasted all this energy, and none of it led anywhere.
But he had like
I
a
didn't
2-minute period to do it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I didn't really answer your question, Luke. So that was the point I was trying to make is like teaching. I think about as teachable moments where like both have to
You
be sending
did
the
what
right
you
signal
could.
to connect. Yeah, you have to close the circuit. You know, the signal has to go out and come back. Like
Yeah.
it has to come from both sides.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Like it has to be somebody asks, and it happens all the time the other way. That was just like a funny example of like you don't have to know beer to be like you're what? Like
Yeah.
just you can follow the conversation to know
Yeah.
she was wrong.
Yeah,
but-
it would be different in an actual teaching environment because
But-
the impetus would be on you to be like, no, you should actually question
Right.
this.
So she just so in that case she just totally missed out of a teaching moment because she wasn't.
Oh, yeah, that's her loss,
But
not
other
yours,
times
yeah.
I've just been like I'll be talking to someone will ask me a question and I'll be talking to them and they'll have like that similar attitude and the person next to them will just be eavesdropping and they'll go, "Wow, really?" And then I end up that person walks away and then I'm answering beer questions
Yeah,
for them.
right.
They're like, I always wondered that, or I didn't know that, or that's what that flavor is. I actually like that. Where can I find that? It's this like thing or that hop or this like
Sure.
you know. And then they leave
Curiosity.
being like, "Thanks, man." And I have that happen all the time. There's a lot of people who remember my name and I don't remember theirs because that happens and they come
And then
back
you're
like
like,
a month later
"Tips,
because they
please."
left and and they're like, "Oh
I get
yeah,
tips
blah,
for
blah, like
teaching?
you know," because I taught them. So I'm sure that happens to you as a teacher.
Johnny,
Joe.
the key
People
is you
remember
don't-
you don't remember.
Yeah, but I don't get tips.
Johnny, the key is you don't
Yeah,
want
that's
to
true.
lose
You
your
should.
genuine connection with those good people just because of a few bad people that shut you down.
Yeah, and
Which is
it's,
what
it's
you
a
were
good
saying
enough
about
ratio. It's
Flock,
probably a better ratio than actual educators because it's beer. Like people are there to hang
Yeah,
out,
I mean,
relax, and
generally,
take
like
their
you
mind
get
off
more
other
happy
things.
people in the beer scene than probably you get trumpet students, half of whom, I mean,
Well, it's all
I can't
contextual.
even go into the nightmare of it, but
It's all contextual though because it's like different like even like teaching college. It's like different colleges. You're gonna have people there for different reasons.
Sure.
I mean, different bars. You're gonna have people there for
Of
different
course, yeah.
reasons. You know,
there's
like
the get drunk bars, there's the
different
after-work
private
bars,
tutoring,
there's-
different private tutoring
yeah.
firms. You're gonna have students sent there for different reasons.
Of course, yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, on the other hand, I like the reason I try and I like to share my knowledge isn't because I think I'm a great beer teacher. It's because every now and then I'll tell someone a cool thing about beer they didn't know, and I find out they're like a master woodworker that like builds ships, and they'll talk to me they'll be like, this guy's cool, and they'll talk to me like about whatever or answer whatever questions I have about this weird cool thing. Like, I've met so many interesting people, like welders and people that do things, and like, I met a guy who he machines like rocket engine parts or something.
But you guys probably riff off each other.
You have to be like 99.999% accurate when you build parts. So like so much engineering and the actual execution and like double checking.
But you guys,
it's just fascinating stuff.
In that case, but like
me.
you say, that's fascinating stuff. Like you're like self-teaching each other. Like that's like you were saying, like that sort of like real world, just like, you know, connection building where you're just like, oh, this guy has knowledge, like I have beer knowledge.
And
like,
the way you learn that knowledge is just different than if somebody were just in a very dry way delivering it to you in front of a classroom and you're taking notes.
Well, it can become more impersonal.
That guy Frank at the bar who told me how he builds airplane engines. Like,
but also like
I remember that.
But
now.
also like
it's definitely because they're more relaxed.
But you also couldn't be like, well, Frank at the bar told me how to build a rocket, so I'm going to go build one and show that the Earth is flat by taking pictures.
But you have more.
Like, that's not going to work.
As I was trying
like,
to
you should probably
take, like I took your sentence fully seriously, and I was like, oh shit.
Like you should probably take a college course online if you're going to build a rocket.
Well, yeah, but what's more important about rocket building? Learning the
you elitist
curiosity and the energy behind it, what makes it super fun, or actually being able to do it. And I think that's the same question I asked myself.
Well, it depends on your
music.
goal, yeah.
What's more important, that this person becomes like the most amazing trumpet player and like wins a job, or that they go off and do what they were already going to probably do in life, but they have an appreciation of music, and it's a way that perhaps I can build a structure of artistic appreciation in their brain so that music is a thing that they can use as a tool, as a escape, whatever people find music.
Well, that's the other thing that I think is really important with teaching overall is, and that's something that like I find all the time, like I mentioned that earlier, assessing specific individual student needs. And some students, or a lot of students you meet and you're just like, yeah, like these skills are going to help you in different ways. Like you should learn these. And then like other students, it's just like, you just got to pass. Like you got to get through this. And then other students, you're like, you're a really good writer, or you could be an even like better writer. Like you could be. And I've had students who like go on to like, they write really good, like they've written books. Like they're like editors of like the school paper and shit.
What
like,
you're describing is that you find a student where they are, and you get a read of their potential. Yeah. And then you tell them, because kids need to be told this. I need to be told this. Everybody needs to be told this. Hey, you could be way better than you are. 5% better if you did these things, right? Yeah. So if you're telling the kid that's barely passing, look, you need to pass this class. You want to fucking not retake writing 102, right? Yeah. So do these things, and you can be the kind of guy that passes his classes. Yeah. But then the middle guy, you're like, hey, like, look, you've gotten so much better. Like, write a really good paper, and you'll be the kind of guy that writes great papers. Yeah. And then for the top people in the class, you're like, are you interested in writing? Like, you should submit this to a competition because, like, you're really good. Yeah. You could spend a little extra time on this and submit it to this competition. So for each category, you're telling the person, hey, here's where you are, and I believe in investing some energy in you to encourage you to be 5%, 10% better.
That's something usually
not 100%, that's 50%, but 5 or 10.
It's funny, and I'm glad that it's funny that you say that. I'm glad that you mentioned that as somebody who teaches not college people, because that happened twice to me in my academic career, and it was both times in college. It never happened in grade school. And it was the college professor. One was actually not even in a English writing class. It was in a history class. And the other was in an English class. But both times the instructor was like, oh, like, can so-and-so, so-and-so, like, I think both of them named like 4 or 5 students. And they're like, yeah, can you stay after class, like, you know, just to talk for a couple minutes? And both times I was like, fuck, like, what's that about?
You know, am I in trouble?
Yeah, like, oh man, like I must have like just like fucked up that last paper or something. And both times the instructor was basically, their premise was this idea where they were just like, yeah, you guys are like really good, and you could be like whatever you want in this realm.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying like become an author or a professor or, you know, a researcher, but like
consider
like,
what I'm saying.
Yeah, like if you work at this, like you have the chops to like do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And like I remember at the time being like, what the fuck? Like what do you mean? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But then still being like, yeah, the rest of this class is pretty out of it, you know? Like you look around and you're just like, oh yeah, these people are kind of like out of it. And just being like, but I really appreciated that, you know, like looking back, I'm like, that was really cool.
But there's also a way to do it so that you know the person's actually hearing you. Like, so I've given that speech to a fourth grader.
I give it to students now too.
Middle school kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've given it to like 10th grader.
Yeah.
Now, I was given that energy, I think, in and around 10th grade.
Yeah.
I started taking private trumpet lessons, and as Neil deGrasse Tyson says in this video, it wasn't that I was like, oh, gee, these technical exercises that you're giving me are so fascinating. I'm so impressed with the pedagogical style that I'm going to decide to go into music. Instead, I was like, oh,
pedoficular. Thank you.
I have this flame that's been lit up inside of me. This awakening of sorts where I have an appreciation for music, and that's started a fire for myself that I'm going to explore. Yeah. So I've done this to different ages, and I do it in different ways. So for the high school person, I'm like, listen, like, what do you want to do? Like, you know, it's probably the best thing for you to do in right now. And we just did an episode on this, and, you know, makes you rethink going to college of idea. But I always say, you're going to go to college. What are you going to go for? All this stuff. I'm like, listen, there are 3 different types of trumpet players I encounter, and I can tell them at different ages. It sounds bad to say, and sometimes they surprise you, but I can usually tell them what category they're in from the beginning, or if I meet up with them, like sometimes I start a new student who's in 9th grade, right? But the 3 categories are hopeless and
I dig that.
Can succeed if you work hard, and comes extremely natural.
Yeah.
Now, for all 3 of those categories, if you're going to succeed, hard work is necessary, right? For the hopeless category, it's like something fundamental. They're just not even getting any of the concepts, and you can't even see with infinite work how it would work out.
That's like I was saying earlier, like assessing individual needs. You're like, right? You just got to get through this, man. And I'm here to help you, but like, let's just figure it out. I
won't like weaken the system of the class. Like, I'm not going to cheat you through.
Yeah, you can't.
But I will really, really, really help you. And all you really have to show me is some work ethic, and I'll get you through this.
Well, you need to still show that hard work. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
And so for the middle category student, which I consider myself, certainly for trumpet, like
I do. I consider myself that too.
I had to really work at things and unlearn a bunch of habits and relearn new things.
Yeah.
And it was only in my late 20s that I started to feel things were coming more naturally. Finally, right?
Right.
Like
yeah. I'm at the same place with writing for sure.
And it's a new territory like that you explore.
Yeah.
But there are also like the flip side musicians who like it came naturally at a very early age.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because they started so young. Sometimes it's just for trumpet, honestly. And I talked about this with a trumpet teacher at a summer festival I did. We were talking about teaching and young kids, and like I was like, it's so fucking mysterious because like so much of what determines whether you'll be successful as a trumpet player is when you're in 4th grade, where you happen to put the mouthpiece on your face. And from
That's
that
crazy,
point,
dude.
you start to build what you define as your what we call embouchure, this French word, which means how you shape your lips into the mouthpiece. And that can pretty much determine like which category of trumpet player you're in.
Yeah.
Now, I was in a low end of category 2. I had a really bad embouchure, and in 11th grade of high school, I did what's called an embouchure change. And I switched to a completely different mouthpiece placement and started to relearn trumpet from that placement.
How did you figure out how to do that?
I ran into enough trouble, and my teacher finally brought it up to me.
Yeah.
And she even said, I've been thinking about telling you
this. This was the one you locked in the fucking closet?
No, definitely not. She sucked. That's why she got locked in the closet.
Lesson to all you young teachers out there: be aware of the closets.
This was the teacher that got me into music, and
that's cool.
She was like, "Yeah, I was thinking about bringing that up for the past year that you might need an embouchure change, but the last thing I wanted to do was plant that seed in case you didn't need it, because then it's when you think your embouchure is fucked as a
Sounds
trumpet
like
player,
a shitty teacher too.
Then it distracts from anything artistic. All you can think about is this technical how
aspect,
your muscles are shaping into the mouthpiece kind of thing. So that's, these kinds of teaching decisions of what information do you reveal, what information do you keep to yourself, and like you kind of guide people along the way.
Well, that's even like when I'm reading through a paper, I'm like, let's focus on this because like this is an issue that like this doesn't matter if you don't address this first.
Sure.
Like, you got to get this baseline down.
That process of prioritizing what to talk about.
Totally.
I've noticed I streamline that so well as I get older. Like, somebody will play a piece, and I'm like, what should I address? And you know what I end up doing? Sometimes for a whole lesson, I'm like, we're going to play long tones. That just means you just play one note. And almost always for trumpet, the thing that's at the fundamental that's ruining everything is you're supposed to just breathe in and release, just no holding, right? And so many people, they breathe in and they squeeze their chest muscles.
Yeah.
In other words, slam on the brakes, and then they try to hit the gas, and like everything you play after that, will
there's
be tight,
no
intense,
flow to it,
no beauty, no flow.
Yeah.
Flow state in general is a place I
God,
like
that's
about.
true in writing too.
Yeah, I think
true.
I want to do a whole episode on flow. Johnny, have you heard of the guy Steven Kotler?
I'm sorry, I stopped listening. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, I just interrupted my flow. You're going to have to start over like 5 minutes. No, I don't know who
Johnny's
Kotler
pissing in
is.
a bucket right now.
He's this fascinating guy I just heard on a podcast
not
for
right
a second
now.
time. He researches how to get people into flow states, right?
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Of course, like anything, like even mindfulness meditation, the defense
Adderall.
department is like interested in it, right? Because like anything that can, make better soldiers. So,
oh my God.
Flow
That's scary.
is something I've thought about, and one of the things that happens in flow is that you can process way more information.
Yeah.
Usually you lose yourself. It's when you completely lose yourself with no distractions in the thing. And so, do you know what this guy does? He's a writer.
Cool.
And he said he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day. He walks out to this like shed thing he has, and he goes out there, and it's just him and this one light. No phones are plugged in, no technology, and he works for 4 hours until 8 a.m. And he's able to get into a flow state where there is no past or future. It's just like doing that thing. And the studies they do show that when people are in flow states, they're up to 400% more productive, more creative. Like on almost every front, your brain's just firing on higher
I don't think I can handle that.
And it's really tiring. Like, you don't want to do that if you're not getting enough sleep. Like, being in flow state
I get enough sleep.
takes a lot out of your brain. So I've thought about that with teaching, but it's really hard to teach that, how to get into flow state, because it's really hard to do it yourself.
Right.
Most of the time it happens, it's an external trigger that gets you there, and it's not like a willful thing you can tell your brain to get into flow state. But the other thing I was going to mention was that one way I view teaching in the music world is that I just try to be a mirror so that people can see a reflection of themselves accurately.
Do you hold up a mirror?
No.
It's pretty meta.
I mean, there's always a mirror there.
Would it be
but,
would it be a large like U-shaped tube because it's sound?
Yes,
Isn't that the sound
it would
version
be
of
a
a mirror
U-shaped tube.
to send the sound back at them?
Metaphorical mirror.
Wait, U-shaped, like Luke-shaped? Like...
No, like a tube. Like you take a pipe and bend it over, so that way if you shoot sound one way, it comes around back at
shit.
you. So it's an audio mirror.
Oh, nice.
I mean, in a sense, it is an audio mirror because, like, you really don't know how you sound when you're playing.
That's kind of cool.
You have a sense of it, but you don't know for sure. And a teacher is a way to get a sense of how you sound more accurately.
Well, one thing I should mention as well is, like, I don't even like the phrase teacher or, like, even professor. Like, I think of myself more as a facilitator, which I'm not even sure what the definition of that is, but I think that's at the core of like a lot of what we've been saying about how like, I'm facilitating you figuring out shit for yourself. Like one thing that students come to me a lot with is they'll say, not a lot, but like they'll say, "Can you fix my paper? How do you fix my paper? Can you just read through my paper and fix it?"
You're like, you want to say "fuck you"? You think that's what my job is?
So do you want to know what I say instead? I literally say this to students.
Why don't you go fuck yourself?
I say, wow, that's way better than what I was just going to say. So thank you, Johnny, for saving me. I say,
you didn't tell them to. You're asking why they aren't doing it. Sorry, go ahead.
I say, what you're looking for is an editing service. I'm your professor. I teach you the rules to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And they just kind of stare at you. When I say they, I mean the ones who ask this question, and they'll kind of stare at you and be like, "What?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll explain to you how to do it, and then you have to figure it out." That's the skill.
Yeah.
That's learning the ability.
You're
That's
in
gaining the ability to be able to do it.
This is what you're trying to learn,
Yeah.
right? So, tell me if this rings true with you at all, Joe. I have this concept that I've called chasing ghosts. And what it means is in the teaching world, I'm good. You can finish that.
Word.
In the teaching world, chasing ghosts means you have a student who you're really trying to crack and like figure out what are they not getting, how can they get this, right?
Yeah.
And week after week, you're genuinely trying to figure out like what are they not getting, what am I not communicating, and you realize you're chasing ghosts, and what that means is they're not practicing at all.
Yeah.
And they're not even engaging in genuine effort in the lesson.
Yeah.
They're giving you their half kind of brain.
Yeah.
And so you're chasing after potential reasons why they might be confused. Like, oh, maybe you're thinking of it like this.
And it's just a lack of effort.
Yeah, it's a ghost. It's like, there's
I like that phrase, yeah.
You're chasing ghosts, and it will tire you out if you chase ghosts.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've learned is when I have a new student and I'm trying to read them, I'll assign them one thing. I'll just circle one technical exercise. It might be Clark for trumpet players, Clark technical study, let's say number 37 from the second study.
Yeah.
Very easy to learn, even for a beginner, right? It's just one of those, did you do it or did you not do it, right?
Right, so you can assess that then, yeah.
And then I'll come in, and sometimes, boom, they nail it, right? And I'm like, all right, I got a worker. I don't know if I got a creative person. I don't know if I got a good trumpet player, but I know I have a worker.
And that's a metric that's worth knowing. Yeah.
Now I know that.
Yeah.
But I'll often get kids who come in, can't even play it, and I go, oh, like, was this confusing? Like, how much did you get to practice? Like, what kind of week did you have?
That's really savvy, dude.
And they'll say, I had a pretty busy week. I'm like, oh, yeah, totally get it. Like, busy time of year. I was like, what'd you do? And they were like, well, we had to go to Grandma's house on Sunday. And I'm like, yeah, how's Grandma? Good. So what'd you do Monday? And they're like, oh, I didn't think you would ask about Monday. I'm like, you said you had a busy week. You didn't say you had a busy Sunday.
A week is 7 days.
But for the kid, they thought that was enough bullshit to get them, even if it's just like socially.
Well, because it was for their parents, They did the kid wasn't just hanging around the house getting in the way. So they're like, go practice your freaking instrument. They were busy. They were doing shit, and then they started the work week and forgot about their kids. You know how annoying it probably is after dinner when you're trying to answer work emails and your kids are going. Brr, 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 brr. You're like, shut. Okay, you did great. Yeah, that was 20 minutes. Go play video games. Go away now.
Yeah.
So a lot of that's on the parents.
I'm terrified of the idea of having kids because I know what it would mean to be a really good parent, but I can't guarantee that I would get there.
It's insane to be a really good parent.
You have to
the really good parents I know.
Hero.
The really good parents I know are fucking superstars plus.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
And I know some of them. I really respect it. I do.
Yeah, but it's insane.
I don't necessarily want to become the personality that is required to do that.
But you know what's funny is because
maybe I do. But
I'll straight up ask them. I'll be like, how do you do this? And they're like, it's always the same answer, dude.
I don't know.
No, it's just you just do it.
Yeah.
You just do it, and
you know what Eric,
that's at the core of a lot of things I've done.
What Eric Weinstein would call that is he calls it a either he calls it a fundamental or he calls it like derivative, like or a primitive. That's what he calls it. He said the human mind seems to come with these categories called primitives, and it's just these things we do. One of them is when you have a kid, something clicks in you that's like, I'll do everything I can to make that thing succeed.
Yeah.
And even against all logic, someone's like, how are you doing this? Like, you're waking up at 3 and driving this person on a 7-hour trip every morning to like,
working
whatever
6
the
jobs,
crazy
like whatever
situation is. How do you do it? It's like, I just do.
Yeah, I just make
there's
it
something
happen.
primitive about it, right?
Yeah. I like that phrase, the primitive. Yeah.
So chasing ghosts was one theme I had with teaching, and I suppose the rest of what we can do is let's just go one for one with like insane teaching story. Like, what's
true.
the craziest situation you found yourself in?
Well,
I've already given up one of the funnier ones for me, which was like my student had his dad's shoes on.
Oh,
Let me also say, one time my student pointed out that I had 2 different pairs of shoes on. And I have a picture of it. I'll post it on this episode.
Oh my God, please do.
I'll put it on the blog or whatever, wherever this episode ends up.
I have one that I think is pretty good, but I also want to know if Johnny has a would you rather. So, do you?
Not really.
Okay, I'll just tell my story then.
My contribution to this is that I never got assignments done on time as a student. So having said that, I'll have a great would you rather in like another day and a half.
Fair enough. My craziest story? I mean, there's so many like stories that are just like, I can't believe that student did that. Like, that like they were just talking on their phone in class, or like they brought chicken parmesan into the computer lab and thought that was okay.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, whatever. But like, I think the one that stands out to me that was just like, it was just so like raw was like when I was teaching as a like advisor counselor in New York City, at a school for.
Oh, that was for how many years were you doing that?
I was only there for like a year.
Oh,
yeah, but yeah, I was there for like 1 year. But it was a school for it was like a night school program, like an after work program for students who had either dropped out of high school and were trying to come back and get their degree, or like they were struggling through high school and like weren't going to graduate on time. Yeah. So it wasn't a GED program. It was like to get them their high school diploma. And a lot of them, like, these were like lower income, like socioeconomic students. So like a lot of them either, worked day jobs, like 9-to-5 jobs, or had like, families of their own.
Yeah.
Like, young kids with like intense situations. And I remember,
young, like,
I mean, they were all, I think they were all like 17 to 21.
That's what I mean. So imagine being 20 and having that.
So that's
responsibility of 2 kids, but also like not.
So that was
being a 20-year-old, not knowing anything.
Yeah, that was exactly the idea behind the program. Was that like a lot of the reason why these students didn't go back to get their degree, their high school diploma, was because they're like, I'm 20, I have like a kid, and I like watch grandma. Like, I can't be in a classroom with like 15-year-olds. Like, that's weird as fuck, So like they would just like not go to high school anymore, because like why would they? So like this program was to try to help them get through. I remember there was this one student, and like I worked like so fucking hard with this guy, like talk about chasing ghosts. I mean all sorts of like crazy stories with these kids, because they had all sorts of crazy family situations. But I just remember this one kid in particular, because like he generally like just couldn't like focus and like couldn't get through the classes, and like we tried so hard like all year to like come up with like, and he had a lot, to his credit, he had a lot of other stuff going on in his life, and he we came up with all sorts of plans and schedules to try to get him through, and I just remember he was like so close. Like he was in this program for like, when I started, for like already a year. So he was in this program for a couple of years, and throughout the whole year we worked, and he was like so close. He was like 2 classes away from like graduating, and like something happened where like it turned out that he had too many absences and like he was gonna fail, and like he had to do all these makeup classes, but he couldn't make it because of work. Like he had like legit,
And he had to work.
yeah, he had to fucking work.
Couldn't lose his job. Man.
And like it basically like I think it came down to like he just like wasn't going to be able to sleep, like basically like he had to like change his shifts, and like it was going to be rough. And like I just remember like he like was just like he like threw up his hands and he tried to leave, and I remember like I tried to stop him. I was like, no, you can't leave, like you got to go to fucking class, man.
Yeah.
And he was just like crying, and he's like, no, I can't do it, I have to leave. And so I actually like wouldn't let him leave. I blocked the door. I stood in front of the door because he tried to go out through the emergency exit. And I was like, you can't, like, not only can you not fucking
Then he's
go
like,
out,
fuck you, I'm going out the main
yeah,
exit.
Yeah, not only can you not go out through the emergency,
It's an emergency.
yeah, fucking exit, but like I'm not gonna let you go. But the funny thing was, like, this kid was like 6'6". Like he was huge. Like I'm not that tall, and like
Right.
this kid was like,
But it's not like you're saying, I'm not, letting you into your girlfriend's house. Or you're saying, like, the subtext of what you're saying is like, hey, man, I'm not giving up on you. Like,
yeah. And I was just like, I remember like spreading my arms in front of the door. I was like, you're not going through. Like, you're going to have to like get through me, dude. And like, I think I said something like that. I was like, yeah, dude, you're going to have to like get through me to go out through this exit. And he was just like, finally after a minute, he like calmed down and he was like, all right. And I was like, dude, I'll like walk you to class. And I walked him to class, and I remember like 2 months later, like he we kept working and he got through it, and he wound up, he wound up graduating. And like,
oh really?
Oh yeah, he made it. Like, but like he had that breaking point, and I just remember like, being like, nah, dude, like you can do this, like you got like, and it was because I realized I was like, I just working with him so much, I was like, he can do this. Like,
Well, yeah.
I know that he can make this happen if we like keep working on this. And like that was such an extreme
maybe
example,
you don't even really know, but like you're like, it's worth the risk. Like,
well, and that's
I don't know it,
and that's
the outcome of anything, but like it's
yeah.
worth trying.
And that to me is like really like the core of like, I guess like, teaching at its like best, where it's like, I don't know where that kid is today. Like, I don't know what he did with that high school degree or high school diploma, but like, I would like to think that he learned something about himself and like
Sure.
what he's worth and like what he's capable
Like the
of.
fact that he has a high school diploma is way less important than the fact
Way
that
less
he
important.
learned he could do something
Probably.
that he thought he couldn't.
Right. Exactly.
Which you can do for me. I do it all the time at the micro level, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, I can't play that note. And then I realized, okay,
Yeah.
we got some kind of like self-confidence issue going on. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep pushing on the like, do it again, more.
Can't is
Like,
so
I gotta,
arbitrary
like, go
depending on what
back
you're
to,
talking
like,
about. Yeah.
Reset and like, do something else. It's-
They say I can't do something. Say, could you have done it with a broken pinky, and then snap that one in half and be like, yeah, I hope you can do it with. Let's find out if you can do it with one broken pinky, because we're gonna find out if you can do it with two broken pinkies. That's the way you motivate.
I want to have Johnny come into one of my classes as just like not even a guest lecturer, but like we'll call him like guest lecturer, and they'll be like, well, from where? I'll be like, oh, he's a life coach.
Yeah.
And, like,
I'm just a coked out like 80s professional wrestling character, pretty much.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, it'll be like he doesn't look like he's from the 80s, and we'll be like, oh, he's from the 80s. Don't you worry.
Oh, he never. That's because he's not from there. He never left. He's still there.
So I'm gonna flip through my phone here and just see it. I wrote down a few teaching stories. I'm gonna see if I have any that I haven't said. Oh, this is a good one. I had a kid that he would always poop right before the lesson. So he was at this music store, and he would always like his lesson. Let's say it was at like 6. He would always show up at like 5:50 and lay down a fucking nightmare in the store bathroom, and like everybody knew it. And like he would come in, and like like people tend to have that like I just took a nasty shit kind of energy.
Wait, how does that energy? Is that body
then at one
language?
point,
Is
one
that
of the
tone?
workers
Luke's very
at this-
sensitive. Luke's very sensitive to that kind of energy, Joe. All
One
right,
of the
don't
workers at
belittle
the-
his abilities. All right,
One of the workers
We all
at the
have
store
our
at one
skills.
point.
I'm not
even-
belittling it. I just want
sounds
qualitative
like you're
examples.
I gotta
belittling.
say, this is a post hoc thing because I didn't think that he was pooping at the store until one of the workers there was like, yo, your 6 o'clock student.
Your 6
takes
o'clock.
a big shit every week, right?
It's
before
like
the
consistent every week. It's just a
more or less.
You know
yeah.
what that is? That's a fucking nervous shit. He's scared of your lesson.
Could be.
Taco Bell.
Or he's just regular as hell. You know,
He could be really regular.
that's his time.
So
Maybe
what-
that's just his time.
So what happened after his very regular 6 p.m. pre-lesson dump, Luke?
Nothing really. This was the.
Oh, that's the story?
This was the kid that would only talk to me through a mirror.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
For like 3 years,
I mean,
he only talked
that's
to me
a story.
through
Luke,
the mirror.
don't. That's the story. Don't just gloss over.
Jesus
it.
Christ.
See,
Luke.
Joe, I
Tell
need a
that
writing
one.
teacher.
Come on.
Yeah, Luke, that's narrative gold, baby.
That's gold.
That is gold.
The poop thing will just be a detail thrown into like the chapter 1, I guess, right?
The poop is the preface. Because it's like, well, that's weird. And it's like, wait, he only talks to mirrors? Okay. Like, that's...
Right. I mean, I eventually got him over that.
Wait,
but-
what was it? Did he explain why?
No.
Did he... How did you know he only talked through mirrors? Like, he would just look at the mirror?
There's always a mirror in the rooms in music lesson rooms.
But I mean, like, he would, like, when he
would
spoke
look
to
at
you...
me through the mirror.
Like, did you ever, like, Did you talk to him through the mirror?
No.
Oh.
I mean, I would do both, right?
Was
I
the
would-
mirror
I would
behind
make
you
eye
or next
contact
to
with
you?
him through the mirror, but then like also just look at him.
But was the mirror behind...
It was to the left of him, and he would turn to his left and look at me to his right, but through the mirror to his left.
When he was playing or just when he was talking?
Only when talking. When he was playing, he was looking at the music stand, which is straight ahead of him.
And then, so what broke that streak? You said for like 3 years.
He got over it. What can I say?
I guess that's all you can say.
Something you just grow out of, you know.
Oh my god, what the fuck, dude? That's
see.
that's funny,
I remember
dude.
there was like 2 years I would only talk to people through a cup on a string. No, I'm just kidding. would be weird.
We did that when we were kids, Johnny. I think Fortsville had one of those. No?
Oh, we did, but you also could just yell the same distance. So
Yeah, but that wasn't
it was
as
only
fun.
if you're trying to whisper.
I mean, we
something.
also planted water balloon landmines, but that was impractical. There was just holes
That's
that people
the
would trip in.
friendliest kind of landmines.
Yeah, but it was also just a hole. It was way more effective than the water balloon hidden within it.
So we were planning on trying to do this teaching episode for a while. So I started, as I was teaching the past like 2 months, writing down quotes. So
Yeah.
here's one I got from a kid that I think it was a 8th grader. Started trumpet lessons, wanted to audition for some kind of thing. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And he, quote, because I wrote it down right after he said it.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
I don't even like trumpet. It's stupid. I mean, it's pretty good. Like, you're good at it. But I'm switching to chorus or maybe drums. Dude, I'd take 1,000 drum lessons a day if I played drums. I mean, it's not like I don't know how the notes go, but I just, like, don't know what buttons to push down.
Wow, that's gold, baby. That's
How old?
That's pure.
8th grade.
That's what that is.
That sounds like someone figuring his shit out. I bet that guy still plays drums.
Trumpet.
Oh, sorry. I mean, trumpet.
That's cool. It's funny you say that though about writing it down because like that comes up in class all the time where somebody will say something and I'll be like, "That is fucking gold." And unless I write it down right then, I totally
It's gone. Because it was
gone.
so chaotic.
It's just in the
reason
ether.
it was gold,
It's
it was
just-
like it's such a chaotic thing to say.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll like pause. I'll be like, like should I like pause to write this down? And it's funny. I'm way better at it in individual student meetings because I'll actually do that. I'll be like, just give me one second.
Give me 1 second, and you write it down.
It's funny.
yeah.
Wait for next week. Maybe I'll post this on the podcast. Fuck it, I'll post it on the podcast or
Okay.
something. Like, because I'll do this on Facebook. I'll say like top 5 conference
Oh, I've
quotes.
seen
of,
that, yeah.
conference quotes of the day, and some of them are just like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
you were talking about lizard people all day, and it's like a little bit, you know.
For me, it's more of like the kid logic thing. Like,
It's
for
a hell of a
example,
gig.
Ideally.
Kid logic is just like I was talking about long-term results, and that like
Yeah.
I was in any time I give motivation to get good at your instrument, for example, I'm very clear to say, look, you're not going to see amazing results right away, and this makes touch points to those psychological studies where they tell a kid like you'll get 1 cookie if you just want to eat it now, but if you wait and don't eat that cookie, we'll be back in 10 minutes and you'll get 2 cookies. And they follow those type of personality types that are able to wait
Yeah.
and delay their gratification. So I'm like, look, you're gonna
that's
have
not
to
the
wait.
experiment. The experiment is the M&Ms, and it's for every like
is the
2
M&Ms.
minutes. For every 5 minute you don't eat the M&Ms, we add an M&M. But as soon as you eat one, we stop adding them, no matter how long you take to eat them. So you can't just like wait 10 minutes and then eat one every 5 minutes. It's when you decide to cash out.
So
but you're
that
right.
delayed
It is a type of
gratification.
personality.
Yeah.
Because to be able to say, I'll just wait because it's more later rather than some now.
Exactly, and that actually takes like mental model building, right? So,
But the thing is, you always hit a point. Like, I'm sure there's some kids that
Everybody
wait till
hits
they
a
have
point.
10,000
Yeah.
M&Ms. But everyone hits a point where they go, I don't even want this many M&Ms. I'm going to start eating the
This is
few
like-
I want. I'll leave the ones I don't.
That's
you know?
like every other Genie would you rather.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we stuck some in there, you know.
So I'll tell a kid like, look, you have to like wait for the results. You have to do this every day for a while before you see results. That kind of thing, right? And so as I'm talking to him, I'm like, oh, let me bring up this example. I'm like, for example, like I started going to the gym in like late January, early February, and the gym is really crowded during those months. And I was like, by the time of this month, and this was just like a month ago, so something like April or May, I was like, the gym's starting to get pretty empty. I'm like, why do you think the gym's so crowded in January and February? And I'm trying to get him to say like, oh, like people are highly motivated, but then when they don't see results like right away, like they give up,
Yeah, they
right?
fart
That's what
out.
I was getting
Yeah.
at. I sort of like primed him like obviously to answer that. I thought so at least, right?
Yeah, ideally.
Guess what his answer was? To
I gotta take a 6 p.m. dump.
no, I was like, why are the
I'm-
gyms that
I'm-
crowded in
I'm turtle-headed
January and
hard.
February? He said people want to get strong so they can shovel snow,
Wow,
and I was like,
that's a logical fallacy. I was teaching those
I
today.
never thought about that though. I didn't even think about how dumb that is. Like,
It's a logical fallacy. It's not looking past a certain
but like
base
all
layer.
he thought was like, what's unique about January and February, and like why would people be
Yeah.
at a gym? And maybe the only gym model of a gym he's had in his mind is
Yeah.
like arm workouts, but like a gym's filled with everything, right?
Yeah.
But like that's not the dumbest wrong answer he could have given.
It's not. There's logic behind it,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
It's not a full.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else with it. My
What'd
dumb
you
kid
think?
logic I was thinking of was you were going to tell him if you practice every day, you'll get good in the long term. And the kid being like, well, I could just practice every other day and wait twice as long, and I'll get just as good. That kind of
Like
kid
that.
logic
Yeah.
is like, yeah, if I only practice once a week, I'll still get as good. It'll just take like way longer. So I'm only going to practice. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You actually have to do it every day for it to.
Yeah, I still want to
last.
see Johnny.
That's
And
another
have fun.
logical fallacy, right?
and have the patience for it to like not work for a while.
You know what, Joe? I'm building up to one master class. It's just like a Ron Swansea hour where there like beer's only going to be like 14 minutes of it, and then I go into something else I spend a couple of years on. Like,
Dude, Ron
you know, and
Swanson
it-
sold a whole fucking special where it was just him sitting in front of the fireplace, like drinking whiskey, and he occasionally changed seating
Dude,
positions.
I play that when I'm bartending around Christmas, like the week of Christmas to New Year's, like that area. I
Yeah?
just play that because
Oh,
it's
really?
a Yule log channel. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just because there's no sport, there's no sports really that time of year. There's not much.
Have you seen that Ron
so-
Swanson clip where he's
Drinking scotch in front of a fire for hours. Oh man, they hung up on me. You know, it was a dick move. That was smart of Luke to bring up Ron Swanson. He's kind of a hero of mine. It's a character from a NBC show called Parks and Recreation. A very self-possessed man, libertarianish minded nut job type. And yeah, they distracted me and hung up first. So you're hearing me talk to just you, the listener, now, not addressing Luke and Joe because they won the hang up game. They freaking hang up on me first, so now they get the last word. I feel like we started this as a way to shorten the podcasts to make it competitive to get your points out and hang up, but we're still going on like 2-3 fucking hours. So I guess we got to start having repercussions. Whoever wins has to buy or whoever loses has to buy the other guy's beer, something like that, because we're at like 2 hours still, and I just look like an idiot. So who really won here? Yeah, well, that was the teaching episode. Hope you all learned something. I'm not going to go too deep because they're going to ruin it with their shallow wrap-up explanation of things. So, all right then. Let's hear what these idiots coming up have to say, and then we'll see you next time. Hopefully something I know some shit about. All right, later, guys.
Fuck, dude, I thought you weren't going to get it in
That was
time.
perfect. Johnny was just like drinking Scott.
I think we had him. We win, right? Fair and square?
Yeah, we got him.
Okay.
He's not happy.
So they're going to hear him first.
That's fine. He's raving right now.
Let's do the classic impersonate Johnny. Sorry about my impersonation of you.
Those fucking losers talking about their. I sound like Trump Johnny. Yeah.
I impersonated you
Talking about their podcast-agogy.
Because you won against us when you were.
Oh, I
down
didn't
at
hear
Johnny's.
that.
Oh, listen to the end of last episode.
I heard. I remember you telling me that you guys just like ripped on me.
I started ripping on you, and then I was like, "Wait a second! I'm just going to go back and be on Joe's team." Like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't rip too hard.
No, we always
And
switch teams.
we plugged your book
Oh, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, share, and subscribe.
because we felt so bad
bye.
about all
Fuck.
the awful things we said. So,
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
so teaching. Did
Yeah.
we leave any low hanging fruit at least that we didn't grab?
I feel actually pretty. I really liked a lot of the avenues we went down. I would just like to say about teaching in general. I think we covered really a lot of the different iterations of like what teaching means and like why it matters in different contexts. And I think for me, as somebody who teaches regularly, blah blah blah.
All right, move on. I won't make you say that word again.
You know what's funny is I can't say that even in class. I was trying to say that today, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
It's
there are
one of
words
those
like that.
My friend, she can't say drawer.
I won't comment on that.
She goes drawer.
Yeah, I can't say it either.
I can't say it either, but she can't say it even worse. So it's like we all have those words,
Yeah,
whether we're drunk or not. But yeah, I feel like thinking about teaching and everything that we've talked about. To me, it's like I'm really there to help. And I mentioned this earlier, how I think of myself more as a facilitator than the phrase teacher. And really what I mean when I say that is just the fact that I like to be there to help people realize what they're capable of and what they can do. And that's like the coolest part of it. Like I have students, in whatever version of what they need or what they're trying to get out of a class where, you work with them and you help them realize like, yeah, I can do this. I can accomplish that. And sometimes it's like, it's advanced. It's like, I'll tell them, I'll be like, you're really good at writing. Like I don't care what you write, but like you should keep writing.
And you might not know you're good at it, but I can tell you are.
Yeah. And that's like I said before, like
and
that.
things that are really hard for other people, you're doing very naturally.
Yeah. And like, that's, when people told me that, like, that was really helpful. So, and then there's other students where it's just like, yeah, like you should realize these skills that you have and how you can apply them to other things. Like, we talked about with thought patterns and ideas of persuasion and, how a lot of these skills and lessons, they're not about writing. That's something I can't believe I forgot to mention till now. But the thing I say the first day of class, and I keep repeating all semester, is that good writing is good thinking, and without good thinking, you'll never have good writing.
Sure.
And that's actually probably the core thesis of my teaching pedagogy, I would say.
Because the writing is
for writing,
how do you for the skill of the writing itself, it's how do you translate the world of thought into the world of language
and make that useful for other people to do something with. Yeah.
And that's different than saying how do you clean up the world of thought, because the world of thought is a whole thing unto itself. And like part of that, I think we've all benefited from scientific type thinking.
Yeah.
And so when I say like that, the underneath the core of my teaching is like, I'd want people to learn how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
I've mostly stolen that from different scientists I've heard who say like scientific literacy, for example.
But there's something to that.
How do you interpret information is the most important.
Yeah.
And if that information is you reading a source and wondering if it's a valid source for a research paper, if it's deciding if a salesman is being honest with you in some kind of way, or
Yeah.
if there's any obvious like telling signs that they're not being honest.
There's so many applications.
There's so many applications to it, and it's really it's how do you think? How do you interpret information, right?
Yeah.
And whether that's in the laboratory of your practice room playing trumpet scales and trying to get an even articulation, or trying to work on soft entrances on a high note, whatever the thing is, you have to kind of approach it in a scientific way, because that's a very powerful pattern of thinking.
Yeah.
And if you can teach that to people and they learn that it's not the specific application that they should remember, oh, this is the date of this, or this is exactly how you do this one specific thing, but you can teach them the pattern that leads to solutions like the one you gave them, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to give some solutions as a teacher. You have to say, look, here's the solution to this. Now I'm going to give you the same problem, but in a different realm, right?
Yeah.
And if they can think through it, now you got them going, right?
Yeah.
In math, it's a specific formula, and it's hard to get them to like zoom out from that. But I love music because I can throw a completely different example, and I often trick them into not thinking, right? And then I catch them. I say, aha. I said, the answer you just gave me, did you think of that answer, or did you give me an answer you thought I would want to hear? And almost always they put the thought into their answer. They just said words that they thought I might want to hear.
Right.
So I say words like air support all the time. Your sound should be supported by 90% air and not by the lips pinching, right? Which is a common mistake young trumpet players make. And then when I say, okay, this is a question after they play something, I almost always ask, I say, what do you think I'm about to say? And I just see if they can predict what I'm about to say. Because if they can predict what I'm going to say, then I've done my job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
They have a
you know
teacher
that
next
you've
to
taught them, yeah.
whether or not I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes they'll answer very well, and I can tell they actually thought, what would I say? And sometimes they just think to themselves, what does he want to hear? You know, like they're not actually thinking. They're just saying like, oh, air. And I go,
well, they think,
what about air?
They
And they're
think,
like,
what's
more?
that answer? And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not,
They don't
you're not
think.
asking the right question.
I mean, they're thinking about what the answer is, but they're not thinking about what my question was. And so you can't just say one word, air, right?
well, you can.
Even
but-
though that might be the answer. So they say air, and I go, what? And air support. I'm like, you said more words. I was like, often I ask my students, I said, pretend you're teaching someone, if they're in ninth grade, I say, pretend you're teaching someone in fourth grade. How would you explain this to them? And the point is, when you can explain something, it means you not only have the ability to do it or the knowledge of what it is, but you have an understanding. It's integrated into your brain at a deep enough level. So like there are all these sort of like tools and tricks I've picked up along the way.
Yeah.
But I would say they all generally fit into the category of how the fuck do you think correctly? How do you...
And it's so funny how that transcends, like, I feel like any medium worth teaching, whether that's writing or music or, whatever the fuck you're learning.
It's on a zoomed out enough level that it transcends the specific topics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
All right.
Teaching.
Well, we win.
That about does it.
Yeah.
We've got to say, fuck you, Johnny.
Fuck you, Genie. I feel bad because we didn't get a Johnny Genie this round.
That's his fault.
I'm kind of disappointed in
we
him.
might have to have a sit down with
Should we have an intervention?
a Genie intervention.
A Genie intervention? He's been slacking lately.
Yeah, he's got to have a would you rather.
He's got to come
He's
with a
got to
would you rather.
demonstrate his power.
Yeah.
Because the Genie's power
Well,
is...
for all he knows, we're Genie detectives keeping an eye on him.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that we're not.
Genie's a concept that goes real deep.
We should do an episode on Genie.
Just Genie episode. Yeah.
Why haven't we done that?
We'll get on it.
Let's put it on the docket.
So if you're still sticking with us,
I don't think
to this
anybody's
point
made
of
it
the
this far.
episode,
Should we tell them a
I was
secret?
about to start speaking in Turkish.
You might as well at this point. We're
Çok
like,
teşekkür
3 hours
ederim.
in.
Dinlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim.
What'd you say about my
I
saucer
said
plate nipples?
that you listened. Thank you very much. If you have any topics, guests, if you're an interesting person and you could be a guest, now's the time to hit us up. We're about to get big. So
yeah. You want to donate now. Sign up for the $100 an episode tier.
Also, Joe,
And
I have
we'll
a
have
crazy
you on.
idea. I'll bring it out right now.
Bang Luke
We
for
should-
$1 million
no, no, we
an
should-
episode. Yeah, sign them up now.
We should set like if we make because on Patreon you can set goals, so we can say if we get to this amount, we'll do video,
Oh, I would totally do video.
and we just have to set the amount at what would realistically would it cost?
Yeah.
Because it would just be basically what we do with like a Skype recorder type
Yeah.
thing, except it would include video.
Yeah.
And we just need to like upgrade that camera, but like
We could do that.
let's do it.
So like, share, and subscribe is what you're saying?
I'm saying if you crazy people want to,
You're missing all the mannerisms. You're missing the studio. There's fucking ghost masks and other shit on the walls.
yeah, there's a lot of detail here.
There's robots and Legos and
We drink way more beer than you think, probably,
there's a
because
lot
we
of
only
cans.
announce about 25% of the beer that we
yeah.
drink.
I gotta take my 6 p.m. dump.
550.
I hope somebody just like accidentally clicked on the episode at that point and they're like, "Where am I?"
Yeah.
What's
All
going
right.
on?
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks
I think
for joining
I'm
us.
gonna call it a night. I gotta drive in the
Yeah,
morning.
let's call it. Yeah. So we'll see you next week, and
like, share, subscribe.
yeah, whatever. See ya.